Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 2004 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Hilary Swank won for her performance in Million Dollar Baby. But why did she beat fellow nominees Annette Bening, Catalina Sandino Moreno, Imelda Staunton, and Kate Winslet? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 77th Euro Best Actress at the Oscars, which covered the films of 2004. We'll be discussing how Hilary Swank won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today, you last heard on this Best Actress series for the Oscar year of 1932 to 1933, which was Katharine Hepburn's first win way back in the day. Film critic and costume designer, writer at the Film Experience, Photogenie, and Magazine HD, member of multiple critic groups. Welcome back to the show, Cláudio Alves.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
Very excited to have you on. Also now officially Golden Globes voting member. Hello.
Yeah, let's hope that continues. And 2004, good year for the Globe choices.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. Some of the nominees, negligible, but
Nicole Kidman in Birth is worth every
that's
Scarlett
true.
Johansson.
Yes, the Oscars could never. But yes, before we talk 2004, let's talk Best Actress overall. So last time you were on, you said that your favorite Best Actress win was, of course, Vivien Leigh in Gone with the Wind. So now I'll open it up and ask you, what is your favorite Best Actress lineup of all time?
I recently rewatched every film from the 1974 lineup, and I think I have to choose that one. Any of them would have made an all-time winner.
Yeah. I totally agree. Do you have a preferred one if you had to pick?
I mean, yeah, Gina Rowlands.
Yeah, that's usually the one.
Yeah.
Hard to disagree on that one. But yes, I totally agree. And I always say, like, people like Diane Carroll and Claudine or Valerie Perrine and Lenny, who, neither of them may have been particularly as close to winning, could have won in another year if they had come out, in a different year. So like 73, for example, or 75, who knows? But yeah, great pick. But my other question for you, you told me your most heartbreaking loss was Judy Garland in A Star is Born. Very popular pick, as we've heard over multiple episodes. But now I'll ask you, what is your most heartbreaking snub? Someone who wasn't even nominated for Best Actress.
That is a very complicated question because there are so many, but because 2004 is the theme, I decided to go with Nicole Kidman in Birth.
Yeah,
it's my favorite performance of hers. I recently rewatched it, and it's just genius, and it would have made what is already a pretty good Best Actress lineup, one of the best ever.
Yeah, that is a great pick. If she replaced one particular person in this lineup, I think this is a pretty perfect lineup. And we'll get to who that is maybe later on. But yeah, I think that is a top 3 Nicole Kidman performance. And at least the Globes nominated her, as you said. But great, let's talk about this year at the Oscars. The 77th Academy Awards nominees were Annette Bening in Being Julia, Catalina Sandino Moreno in Maria Full of Grace, Imelda Staunton in Vera Drake, Hilary Swank in Million Dollar Baby, and Kate Winslet in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, with the winner being Hilary Swank. So before we break down these performances, did you have any overall thoughts on revisiting this lineup?
I mean, probably my biggest impression is how strong it is, even the performance that I like the least. It's still a solid effort that would, I wouldn't really choose it as a bad nomination, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really solid. It was striking how different these actresses are approaching their films and how different the films are, what they ask of each of them. It's not usual that we have such a varied array of acting styles and approaches when it comes to an Oscar lineup.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, they're all very much doing different things. And, I really enjoy this lineup a lot too. I think that it's a great mix of styles. We've got broad comedy, we've got, harrowing drama, movie stars, newcomer here, and a great character actress, getting this amazing platform to show her skills as a lead. And we've got different accents than, their normal speaking voice. No biopics. Yay for that. Uh, we, always want to celebrate that. But yeah, it's a fun group, and it's one where I've really sort of gone back and forth on who I would prefer to have won. It is fascinating that Hilary wins her second Oscar here, especially looking back now and seeing that she really didn't have a strong career beyond this sort of window of time in the late 90s, early 2000s. And yes, we have, round two of Hilary versus Annette, and once again, the same result. But, it's also exciting to have a Mike Leigh film again in the race. Exciting to have Kate Winslet now kind of on a roll and well on her path to winning her Oscar in a few years. And, it's really cool to see Catalina Sandino Moreno too for such a subtle performance, Spanish language performance, debut performance. So yeah, fun group. And also worth mentioning, I think there's no coincidence what's happening in this category now, where we once again have another D-Glam kind of role winning. I think this is a little bit of a contentious year because I think Hilary's performance isn't universally loved, but people have very different opinions, I think, on who should have won this. So I think it'll be fun to get into all of this.
Let's have fun.
Yes. All right. Well, we're starting off with Annette Bening in Being Julia. So Annette Bening gets her second Best Actress nomination here, third nomination overall. Since we last talked about her with American Beauty, she hasn't really had a lot of hits, per se. She's in What Planet Are You From?, which is a Mike Nichols movie, but a notorious bomb. And she's in Open Range in 2003, which was a Kevin Costner Western that she was not necessarily the focus of. So, not much in between, although I did also want to note that she appears as herself in a dream sequence on The Sopranos, also in 2004. One of my very favorite moments from The Sopranos, where Tony Soprano straight up says, "You're Annette Bening." Very funny moment. Anyway, Being Julia, it's based on a novel called Theater, which was written in 1937, and it tells the story of Julia Lambert, played by Annette Bening, a British theater star who is approaching middle age. She's married to a theater producer, played by Jeremy Irons, and she kind of reignites some passion in her life in the form of an American named Tom, who is a fan of hers, and they embark on an affair, but she eventually comes to realize that he may have some ulterior motives for getting close to her. So let's get right into it. We have Annette Bening going British. What are your overall thoughts on Annette Bening as an actress and her performance here in Being Julia?
Let me just say that I am a fan of this performance, but I resent the fact that it gave her the confidence to continually trying to be British in the decades afterward. Because this is one of the few times when her accent work is mildly convincing.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like Annette Bening. I think she's a very theatrical actress, which makes sense with how she became a screen actress. She first started on stage. She's classically trained, and I think she brings a grandeur to her screen work. She's not one to go into gritty, grounded naturalism, and I sort of appreciate that. I'm like Blanche Dubois. I don't want realism. I want magic. And I think Annette Bening is a very magical presence. Even when she disappoints, there are some films like that, she's always magnetic and riveting to watch. And Being Julia is a film that is basically the Annette Bening show she's the most interesting part of it. She's the one adding more the deepest complexities to it. It often feels a bit like a bit of a shallow film, but I think she redeems it and makes it worth watching. And she's perfect casting for star of the theater that sort of enthralls you with one glance. Because I don't know, looking at her as Julia, it's understandable why someone would fall in love with her.
Yeah. And I think, well, first of all, this is one that I hadn't seen before. So
Oh,
I was sort of waiting to finally get to this year to see it. And I was actually pretty impressed with her performance. At first, I was like, wow, like we have Annette really going hard with
yeah.
this accent. Is this going to work? But I found myself having fun with this and finding it very moving. I feel like maybe her performance in American Beauty kind of helped her to get this chance to play a sort of dynamic role like this that is balancing those comedic tones and the dramatic sort of undercurrent. And I do think she pretty much nails it. You know, I think the film itself is probably the weakest in this lineup, which is pretty much full of good to great films. And this is a little bit of an odd one out in that respect, but it is definitely, to your point, the Annette Bening show. She has this great sort of diva attitude that's fun to watch. She also has this laugh that I think is really infectious. And I do think that with films about sort of women approaching middle age and older age, sometimes there can be a formulaic element at times, and I think the writing and the direction aren't always, that new or fresh, but she really brings it to life and makes it so enjoyable that for me, I don't mind those more formulaic elements. I think it's just, one of those performances where it's like an actress full command of her abilities, pushing herself to do something different and excelling within that, I would say.
And one of my favorite parts of it is the glimpses we have into Julia's theater career, and
Yeah.
how Benning really differentiates the what is a good and what is a bad performance by Julia. But even
Hmm.
even the good ones, there is a sense of very overtly rehearsed gestures and delivery, which it really gives this quality to the film that it gives the feeling that the film is insightful about theater, even though I'm not sure it is, to be perfectly honest. And
Hmm.
that idea that Julia is constantly acting, even in her domesticity, she's constantly acting her reactions or borrowing expressions from her theater, like her son within the film accuses her of doing. I think Benning both performs that, but also shows a certain level of honesty in that. Like
Hmm.
someone for whom acting through life isn't necessarily being deceitful, but it's just who they are. And I think it is a very delicate balance that she gets. She aces, she makes you understand this character and still gives you a sort of ironic edge to her extravagance. She's inviting you to not so much to laugh at Julia, but to laugh along with her in self knowledge.
Yeah, that's kind of what I picked up on is this role could have very easily been very two-dimensional and a little cartoonish maybe of just being like I'm just going to play this very broadly in the big theatrical gestures and that's just kind of the end of it. But I think yeah, to your point she does understand what she's doing and I think is evoking old Hollywood, maybe like more than what people actually sounded like in the 30s, perhaps. But, it works for this larger than life character and this being in the world of theater that is just her life, and there's a very blurred line between reality and the stage for this woman,
Yeah.
you know.
And I would say she also knows how to pull back from that in certain moments. I'm thinking when her son basically comes to her to tell her that he lost his virginity that night. And
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful moment of sort of maternal instinct, but she's also feeling her mortality because she feels old, that he's growing up. And it's also adding to the romantic heartbreak of a scene ago there is warmth in her tears, there is selfishness there too, and she just negotiates all of these things, and for one sort of shows us a Julia that is not rehearsed. I think it is the work of a very mature actress at the height of her powers. I really love her work here. I understand why some don't, because, as you said, it's sort of almost on the verge of cartoonish at times,
Mm-hmm.
but I really love her here, and I think she's very sexy, and it's not a film that is apologizing for her sexuality, even
Yeah.
as an older woman, and and I adore her dynamic with Jeremy Irons in this film.
Yeah.
Their last scene together is maybe my favorite beat of the performance. But I think to explain that, we probably need to talk about the sort of twist at the end of Being Julia, or Revenge.
Yeah. I did just want to get to your point, though, about how she plays off of co-stars, because I do think she really, bounces off of the different energies in this film really well. Like the Bruce Greenwood, who she's kind of alluded to having an affair with. He later reveals that he's gay, but the way she kind of like cries in this beautiful sort of diva fashion, I think is kind of fun, but it's very quickly sort of rebounding and all that. With Tom, who she kind of feels is like her boy toy in a way. I just love how she enjoys sort of dazzling him with her presence in a way, and how much, at least in the beginning, just, how much adoration he shows towards her. There's this line where he says, like, with her beauty, she should be in the movies, and puts on this, like, she puts on this tone where she's like, real actresses don't make films. And there is, like, that, again, level of artifice there where, she's kind of performing the role of diva actress, which is so skillful to me.
And there is a level of class dynamics going on, because in some sense, Julia is putting on the airs of someone maybe from an upper class than the one she was born into, and that is sort of suggested in parts of the film. It's not very explored. I believe it is a bit more explored in the original novel, and it really gives a sense that she's not just performing because she's an actress, she's performing because that is what is expected in the society she lives in, as a way of fitting in. She's a survivor in some ways, and a striver.
Yeah, exactly. And to get to the plot line with Tom, who is with Avis now, played by Lucy Punch, this kind of aspiring actress who is not particularly skilled. Maybe skilled in one particular type of role, perhaps, but
sneezing.
She tries. Yes, sneezing. And she tries to get him to convince Julia to put in a good word for her to her husband, to cast her in his next play. That definitely gives Annette a lot of fun sort of reactions, just kind of like navigating her way through, like her sitting there in the audience watching Avis and clearly not thinking much of her. I think that's really great. Like when she goes backstage to meet her, and she kind of like struggles to really know what to say to like compliment her, and she's just like, you're so good at being blind.
I would just like to say in that scene, I found it very heartwarming how she consoles the other actress who messed up the line.
Yeah.
And it feels really genuine, because I think it would be easy to play that scene as, oh, she's complimenting the other actress in a passive aggressive move against Davis. But
yeah.
Bening plays it like a professional camaraderie, and it's again, it's a really beautiful grace note among all her grandeur and grande dame antics.
Right, because she sees this other woman as more in more of a kinship way. Probably feels like she's been there herself when she was younger. So yeah, it's a powerful, dynamics within that. The scene right after where she does confront Tom, though, about how much he's in love with Avis while he's only like fond of Julia, it clearly breaks her heart, and it's causing her to sort of give a rather faulty performance on the stage. And you can sense that just from the volume of how she's projecting, to your point about like differentiating the good and bad on the stage. and her husband confronting her backstage about it, and her first response is to just fight back. And the power that she has in her voice is so great, so classic Annette, with that voice being like, how dare you speak to me like that, you little shit. Get out of my room. It's just like, I don't know, there aren't a lot of actresses who can project in such a way and also keeping up the accent. But I do think you can also sense how she knows deep down that he's right, that she is not at her best, and that she has kind of lost, her mojo to a certain extent. So again, very skillful, playing with all the different comedic and dramatic elements there.
And I love how she will throw some harsh words at him during that scene, but then she will regret it immediately when he reacts to them. And it's like it's instinctual to be hostile and to be on the attack, but then she immediately draws back. It tells us a lot about who Julia is beyond this narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think also her chat with her son is interesting because he's mentioning like her very performative nature, and I think you can see you can feel her not sure exactly how to respond because acting is her life and it's so important to her, but it's like this accusation almost that like she's fake, that she doesn't process emotions in an authentic way. And I don't think she's necessarily offended by it, but she takes a bit of ownership, I guess, over that aspect of her personality, especially when she finds out that Avis is, having a fling with her husband, and she then goes to put this whole plan in motion to request all these changes to the play to put Avis more in the spotlight. And you're watching it, it's like she's clearly up to something. There's, something's up her sleeve here that's going to be just like, the trump card at the end. I mean, that part, I think she goes a little hammy with it, but I think the payoff is great, where she comes out in this fabulous costume and improvises this whole scene with Avis, and Avis is completely thrown off by all of this, and she just completely upstages Avis in this grand sort of almost like Norma Desmond way. And it's all just to get revenge on her husband and Tom. And unfortunately, this girl is kind of like collateral damage for that. But just that smile when she's like standing there and knowing that she has the audience in the palm of her hand, I think is so good.
It is a scene that sort of stayed with me since I watched this film for the first time years ago when I was a teen. That self-satisfaction. She's like the lion that got the gazelle, and she's licking her chops while still killing her. And like the conspiratorial smile she shares with her son in the audience. And just how cruel it is. I like that the film allows her to be, as her husband later says, a monster. And you sort of love her for how much of a monster she is. I like that's an apologetic side of the characterization. Even if I have to say, for all these years, I've been, how does this work within the play they're showing? Like, she walks on stage swirling around in her feathered cape. It makes no sense, but it's delirious nonsense, and it's so entertaining. And you can see why, even if it doesn't make sense, the audience would eat it up, because it's a feast of actressing.
Yeah, I would be right there eating it up in the audience, being like, this doesn't make any sense, but like, go on, diva. Do your thing.
Oh, and the way she calls back to their sort of private joke, the B-E-N. It is marvelous. It's like each letter is a stab, and she's relishing every moment of it.
It's so delicious.
Yeah. And I love that scene afterwards when she and Jeremy Irons are giddy, and he's calling her a monster, and she's loving it and telling, that's why you love me. And it's I adore that note on the performance, and it's a nice prelude to the very end of it, which is so comparatively quiet, a moment of introspection that you sort of, at least I didn't expect the film to be capable of, but it's the note it chooses to end on. And Bening is marvelous in it.
Yeah. She just gets this quiet moment to herself in this restaurant. She doesn't need to be surrounded. She doesn't need to have a man by her side. She is just living in her truth in this really beautiful way. So I really admire this performance. It's a big swing, and I think for the most part she hits her mark really well. And, this is a performance that I think, compared to some of the rest of this lineup, I think has been a little unfairly dismissed, wouldn't you say, compared to the others? But I think she is worthy of being here, honestly.
I think she is, and well, we're going to talk about this later when we talk about the race.
Yeah.
I think she's harmed by the film truly being the least interesting of the 5 nominated here.
Yeah.
Like, even as I'm talking about the things I love about the film, the spouse's relationship, I want to see more of that. I think the film doesn't know what to do with the greatness it has within it, and it's so boringly shot. I can see why people would forget it, but Bening is really special in it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a case of like The Wife with Glenn Close
yes,
for me.
Yes, exactly.
In the sense that, like, she's putting on this great performance in a movie that is clearly the weakest of the 5 in her lineup, ultimately. But that doesn't make her any less worthy. So anyway, shall we move on to our next nominee?
Let's.
Okay, Catalina Sandino Moreno in Maria, Full of Grace. Very exciting nomination here. Catalina Sandino Moreno is the first Colombian actress to be nominated for an Oscar, and also the first to be nominated for a Spanish-speaking role. It also just so happens to be her film debut. So Catalina, born in Bogota, Colombia, and all she had done in acting was a bit of theater in Colombia. So the writer-director, Joshua Marston, is American, and when he presented this to producers, they wanted him to pick a more established name like Penelope Cruz or Jennifer Lopez, and to, shoot the film not in Spanish. And that was just a no-go, but HBO came about and allowed him to shoot it how he wanted. And so he went to Colombia, and Catalina auditioned and was picked from somewhere between like 800 and 900 applicants. So Maria, Full of Grace is an indie drama about a Colombian woman named Maria, played by Catalina, who quits her job at a factory. She also finds out she's pregnant, but she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life with the father of her baby. And once she becomes desperate for money, she is recruited by a drug mule smuggling drugs into the United States by swallowing pellets in order to safely transport them. And we just track her very perilous journey to New Jersey alongside her friend Blanca, who's also recruited. And at one point, one of the other girls has a stomach problem related to the pellets, and Maria panics and flees from the rendezvous spot and just kind of tries to survive from there. So let's get into it. Catalina Sandino Moreno, thoughts on Catalina overall in her big Oscar-nominated debut?
Catalina Sandino Moreno is one of those cases where you wish the Oscar nomination had meant more to her career, because I do think this is a remarkable debut. I do think the nomination is completely deserved and almost inspired in the context of Oscar history overall. And I wish, because she has tried to keep working in Hollywood, I wish the American industry had given her more opportunities, because we see here in Maria, Full of Grace what she's capable of as a debut. And I think she has given other good performances over the years. I love her in Fast Food Nation, but she really deserves another showcase like this, because this film is completely supported by her. It's built on her shoulders. You take her out of it, and this quite remarkable film simply doesn't work. She's the key to it, and it's incredible when you think to her lack of experience in front of the camera or dealing with such a huge project. That this should have been a Star is Born moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately it does sort of continue a trend of non-white actresses and people of other nationalities, non-Americans even, just really struggling in Hollywood to find work even after a big Oscar nomination. Sort of like Keisha Castle Hughes in that respect, who we talked about last week. Yeah, so I mean, I can't say I have a lot of experience with Catalina. I had certainly seen her in things, but not very much where she does have like a as substantial of a role as this. And I think it's maybe better that way because this is how the world was introduced to her. So it does feel like a pure experience watching this without any real baggage of like knowing what to expect necessarily. Yeah, this is a very assured performance from someone who, hadn't acted in front of a camera before, but there's this real confidence from the direction and also from her as an actress to really communicate everything through her face. And I think she's so striking in her beauty, her face, but it still feels like she is kind of representing a lot of young women who are in this position of being desperate and out of money, and it feels so real and honest. It's again similar feeling that I got from Keisha Castle Hughes actually, where there is that sense that yes, she is untrained, but it is almost better that way, like in a fully natural way. Like there's no shakiness. Like you would almost never guess that she hadn't acted before, but at the same time, she is kind of so unpolished at the same time that it sort of works.
I mean, it's sort of the thing you see in a lot of neorealist movies. The
Yeah.
the lack of acting mannerism, or I don't want to say technique, but also technique sort of
Mm-hmm.
imbues the final work with a level of authenticity it wouldn't have otherwise. Like I can imagine someone like Annette Bening delivering the sort of performance Catalina Sandino Moreno delivers here, but it is also, I think, a very pondered and studied performance. Despite that, like the fact uh, that she worked in one of those flour mills for 2 weeks as training for the role, and you really see it in the first scenes of the film how her movements are almost automatic. She's not even thinking about them. It's almost like she is projecting muscle memory to the audience. And
Yeah.
you speak about her showing everything in her face, and I do think she does, but there is also a certain mystery as if she's keeping part of Maria to herself. It's
Mm-hmm.
a performance that is both open but private at the same time. She's not giving you everything, and that's in the film makes you more interested in seeing where she goes, what decisions she makes, because you're never completely sure of what Maria will do next. And I think that imbues the film with a lot of tension that again just unspools from her performance. It is really the foundation onto which everything else is built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good observation. I think what I notice is this just independent streak from her that she has, and she feels very natural in how she portrays that, just the casualness of her body language to speak to your point about her really feels like she has been working here for much longer than she clearly practiced to. And her kind of sly looks to her friends or her boyfriend. It's this feeling of like, I'm gonna do things my way and also like do what I need to do, but it's not overly showy. And there is that restless quality there though, that's like, I'm not gonna give up my life just to work as at this factory trimming roses for the rest of my life. So like if I don't like the way things are going, I'm just going to quit and then I will figure it out from there. And I just think that kind of just like restlessness is just really exciting to watch because, yeah, you don't know her full motivations and she doesn't fully have the opportunity to express everything that she's feeling or why she's doing the things she does, but you kind of trust her that she'll guide you through it and you'll come to understand it even if she's not saying it.
Yeah, and more to your point, she really is representing a lot of young women in a similar fate or situation as her character, but at the same time, it's a very specific character. She balances that of being a representative of a class of people, but at the same time, she's playing a very specific person. And one of the
Yeah.
things that really shone in her work from this revisit is how how angry Maria often is, how defiant she is.
Mm-hmm.
She's not someone that will take like labor indignities and just swallow it down and continue. Even in later scenes when she's with very dangerous people, there is an outrage bubbling inside of her, which makes moments when she really breaks down with guilt or vulnerability hit all that harder, because it's suddenly this backbone of fury that is motivating her through everything suddenly recedes, and you see another side of her. And that adds so much to the film. You never feel like she is disappearing into the milieu of the film, into the social realism or miserabilism that it could have been. She's this three-dimensional character that is sort of demanding your curiosity, demanding your attention, and she's constantly surprising you, even though you can sort of imagine how our story will go from the shape and from the type of film you're watching. She's making it clear this is a specific person, this is an individual with their idiosyncrasies, and she really earns your attention. It's fantastic. I had forgotten a lot about this film since I last watched it, and so it was really a pleasure to rediscover her.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, once we get into the stuff with the drug mule business and she's realizing that she's going to have to swallow like 60 or 70 pellets whole on an empty stomach, you can tell she's a little freaked out that, this maybe isn't exactly what she expected, but she doesn't betray the character by making her fearfulness too obvious. So like when she's with Lucy, this other woman who shows her how to practice by like swallowing grapes whole, she says a lot with her eyes, I think, just in being like, well, I don't know if I can do all this, but like I'm in it now and I'm gonna have to figure it out, and then just like this visible discomfort she has after she does swallow all those pellets and she's on the plane, and just from the look on her face, like there's some cramping going on, and she goes to the bathroom, and I think like 2 of the pellets have come out or something, and she tries her best to not let it create too much panic, and like she knows she's dead if anything goes missing, so she just swallows them again. I just sort of appreciate how much is communicated, I guess, without her spelling anything out. You can feel Joshua Marston trusting her to communicate everything with her face and her gestures there. And it's very tense, It's a very tense film, I think.
And the entire plane sequence, I watched it and I was thinking this is sort of the platonic ideal of something like the train sequence with Jane Fonda and Julia.
Oh, where that's a good comparison.
Where to me, Jane Fonda is telegraphing a little bit too much in that sequence.
Yeah.
But to a point where I'm like, people would be suspicious of you, honey. but Moreno pulls it off while transmitting that tension you talk about, but at the same time making it believable that she could go through it, that she could do this, that she could be a smuggler in the sense that she could be a drug mule, and it's and that defiance is still there a little bit. Like when you mention that she doesn't panic when she has to put the pellets back inside her, there is that determination to get it done, that fear that sort of boils into a weird confidence that she has, even if she's so unsure. She seems weirdly confident and prepossessed and self-possessed. I even wrote a note that she's like a boiling pot slowly releasing steam for like 100 minutes the performance, because it is so, because you feel that you feel that tension, but it's so well calibrated that it's never too demonstrative. She's never calling attention to her effort as an actress, which to me makes it even more impressive that she was Oscar nominated, because the Academy likes,
and SAG nominated even.
Yeah, because the Academy likes
they're even more
effort.
basic than the Academy. Yeah, I know, exactly.
I mean, that's true, but we shouldn't say it. But
You know. Yeah, let's be honest though. Yeah, I think also to that point, like when she is detained by customs, there is this great meta layer, obviously, where she is having to put on a performance of being clean and innocent. And there is this innocence that she does communicate to the officers, but also like a directness with how she looks at them that really convinces them that, yeah, I'm just a pregnant woman visiting my sister, and like that her boyfriend bought her ticket for her. And she's too pure almost to like be a drug mule that they suspect her of being. It's very subtle, but it's very impressive just in the simplicity with like how easy it is for her to be deceptive in that way. And it all just comes down to survival, I think, for her. It's just like this instinct clicks in, like a confidence, like you said, of like the fear translates into like this, like an adrenaline rush almost that people have. Like suddenly they're like really strong in these moments of total panic. That's kind of what she is communicating, I think.
And it's curious how she gets past customs by, again, a person that is never controlled by her helplessness is sort of projecting that to the officers. But then with Patricia Ray, she's a terrible liar because it's not a life or death situation. It's like the adrenaline rush that you referenced has gone out. She's in the aftermath of that, and you start to see the exhaustion. You start to see the effort, not in Moreno's performance, but in Maria's lies.
And we should talk about that plot line, which is her totally, adapting on the fly when they get to the hotel room and Lucy is visibly sick from all the pellets and she sees blood and is realizing maybe that the men may have done something to her, and she flees with her friend. And just the tension and the adaptability, it's like, again, this is not a safe situation. I have to protect myself above all. And then I love also the moment where she has a moment to breathe, where she gets to Lucy's sister's apartment, which she had gotten the address of beforehand, and just like silently takes a minute, and like everything is kind of catching up to her, and she just kind of silently cries to herself in the hallway. But even that is not that demonstrative. Like it is still understated. But then, yeah, I love the delicate tension of when she does meet Lucy's sister, and brother-in-law, and she lies to them about Lucy being fine and how she told her to go to them if they were in trouble. Again, she does have this sort of innocent sensibility that is trusting. And I know I'm sort of making it sound like she's some sort of like mastermind serial liar type of person, but it is really just showing a person who does what needs to be done to survive, even if it means lying through her teeth just to get by. And yeah, I think also to your point, it's interesting to watch the different ways that she adapts herself, to certain people. And I think some emotion is coming up for her when it comes to Lucy and having to lie to her sister that is very small and understated, but you do sense that this is a little bit different compared to all the lies that came before.
And when she discovers what happened to Lucy, that she died and they found her body, you see Maria really trying to hold herself together. It's that thing where Moreno is showing emotion by trying to by her character trying to restrain it, to conceal it, and then when Lucy's sister discovers the truth, it's the sort of biggest moment of Moreno's performance. But what really strikes me is how small she suddenly looks, how young and vulnerable, and you're suddenly, oh yeah, this is a young woman barely out of her teens. And she's in this country, in this strange country. She doesn't speak the language. She's completely alone, and she's surviving by doing whatever she needs. And yet she still has a heart. And the loss of Lucy and the discovery of the truth, you suddenly see a sort of a shadow of shame in Maria. You see it's a rhapsody that Moreno makes us hear in that moment, and it sort of builds up and creates the context that we need for her final decision. which is, like in Being Julia, it's a really beautiful, wordless moment that depends entirely on the lead actress to deliver, and she does.
Yeah, absolutely. That moment where they're at the airport, her and Blanca, and she makes the choice to not board the plane and just walks right back out. It's like she's going to try and make it work in America, just like her survival instincts once again. Just it's really powerful stuff. Very subtle but very defiant in a way that's like I'm going to do things my way and we're going to see what happens. This is definitely one of those endings where I'm like, I'm so curious where this character ends up from here. Not that we need a sequel, obviously, but just it leaves you with so much to think about, like where she goes from here.
Yeah, and because Moreno sort of in some way she makes you understand Maria's decision, but she doesn't articulate every point of her choice. There is a mystery there, because even as an audience, you don't get to see everything of Maria. There is a dignity to the character. There is a part of her that is only for herself. Even the camera can't access it. And I think that is, as a filmmaker, that is a brave choice. And as an actor, that is a very tricky thing to portray, that I think Moreno just aces completely. It's a brilliant final moment. And it's one of those things that you'd never expect from a debut performance, because it is so delicate, so finely tuned. It's like, I don't know, disassembling a bomb or making up a Swiss clock, and she just hits it. It's perfect. It's one of the best moments, I think, of all of these 5 nominated performances.
Yeah, an incredible final scene. And to not have all of that withholding feel like blankness or feeling too remote, I think it is all the more impressive. So, yeah, highly recommend Maria Full of Grace. Shall we move on to our next nominee?
More depressing one.
Yes, let's keep it going. Imelda Staunton in Vera Drake. Okay, so Imelda Staunton, celebrated British actress. She's now a dame as of this recording. She was just made a dame last week, actually. Stage veteran, getting her first and so far only Oscar nomination here for Vera Drake. So to introduce Imelda, she was born in London and she attended the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and she's had an extensive theater career since the 80s, winning multiple Olivier Awards, including for Into the Woods, and then after her Oscar nomination for very iconic roles in Sweeney Todd and Gypsy. So she did quite a bit of British television in the 80s and 90s, and her film career kind of emerged in the 90s with Peter's Friends, Much Ado About Nothing, Sense and Sensibility. She was part of the supporting cast of Shakespeare in Love. She was a voice in Chicken Run. She was kind of one of those actresses who really kept busy in a lot of different mediums and still is that way. But she hadn't really broken out by this point worldwide until she gives this performance in Vera Drake, which really gives her the opportunity to lead a film, which she had only really done a few times before in smaller vehicles. So Vera Drake, Mike Leigh film, which means a lot of improvisation, small-scale drama centered on the working class. This is a period piece set in 1950 in London, where Imelda plays Vera Drake, this devoted wife and mother who also attends to various people around the city, helping them with their ailments. And one of her services happens to be secretly performing abortions for young women in need, which are illegal. So we follow her and her family as they live their everyday lives until one day when a girl who requested her services nearly dies, and the mother informs on Vera to the authorities, which leads to her being questioned and disrupting her and her family's life forever. So let's get into it here. Vera Drake, a heavy film. What are your thoughts on Imelda Staunton overall and her very vulnerable performance here in Vera Drake?
I will confess it will be difficult to talk about this performance without just talking about the film, because I love Mike Leigh's cinema, and I love this one in particular. Mm-hmm. Regarding Imelda Staunton, she's one of those British character actresses I have admired in small roles over many, many films. And it is always a pleasure when such people get to shine in a showcase role like here. I wish I could see some of her stage work live, because she seems like a force of nature on stage. I've seen the the recordings of her Gypsy and Follies, and wow. So, please, some filmmaker out there, please make a musical with Imelda Staunton in the lead role. Please. Give us that. That can't be only seen by West End audiences. The world deserves to see it. Yeah, she's always a delight, even whether it's comic relief or here. She's one of those people that I can't really think of a bad performance they've delivered that I've seen. She's always very consistent in her quality, even when working in wildly different registers. Like, it is very different to see her in a Mike Leigh film than see her in Harry Potter, and she sort of aces those registers amazingly. And she can be the most perfidious person in the world. She can be the nurse in Shakespeare in Love, who you love to see anxious.
I love her gasping out in the audience in that climax of Shakespeare in Love.
And she can be like the embodiment of depression in her 2 scenes in Another Year. And she can be the Queen Elizabeth II. And hot take, I think she's the best of the 3 actresses to portray her.
Wow.
I know that is not a popular opinion, but I stand by it. And I do think she's incredible in Vera Drake. And this is a very personal thing. She reminds me so much of my grandmother in this film.
Oh.
She only needs glasses and she'd be a double of her. Not that my grandmother was performing illegal abortions in...
That you know of.
That I know of, maybe, we don't know. It is very impressive to see someone lead a film while playing a person that is, in essence, very self-effacing. Because she's clearly a working class woman that grew with sort of traditional values. She's a mother and a housewife. She's a helper. She's always helping people. And especially when Lee films these family scenes where he tends to go for wider shots and mediums with several people in each composition, she doesn't call your attention. She's just part of the environment. She's part of this collective entity that is the family. So I think it is a big challenge to portray someone like that. Or when she's cleaning houses, where it is someone that in all of her behavior is either trying or naturally fading into the background, and make that the lead of your film, and make that a 3-dimensional character that we get to the end of it and I feel like I know Vera Drake, like I understand her. It's a constant balancing act. Like I remember one of those very early sequences where you see her cleaning the house of Leslie Manville, who seems to be rehearsing for Phantom Thread already. And and you see her in the background of scenes, and she's not calling attention to herself, but there is a certain pep to her step, a certain joy that Vera seems to bring to every occasion, which makes what happens to her so heartbreaking. She's such a joyful person, and it would be easy in my mind to portray this social reality with very gloom and doom, but the first act of Vera Drake is really going against that in portraying, at least in the portrayal of Vera. It is very warm. It is very sunny, despite the windows caked with smoke. She's an observer. She's maybe not a meddler, but she sees other sadnesses and she responds to it. She's a very active listener in the film. Like, you always see her responding to people, especially with the girls she helps. It's fascinating to see her different approach to each one of them. There is a constancy of demeanor, of delivery, but you see how she calibrates herself to each of these women. She's always trying to help by any means necessary. It's such a moving portrayal. I really love Staunton in this. I'm sorry if I'm being very sappy and long-winded, but I just love it. I love Mike Leigh's films, and I love that this one got the acclaim it got. Like, it won the Golden Lion and Staunton won the Volpe Cup, which is rare, but
Right.
so completely deserved.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't have one without the other almost. I think, I mean, I really enjoy Imelda Staunton. She's definitely an actor's actor, very theater trained. I think you can feel that sort of like workhorse tenacity in her performances more often than not. I love how much she throws herself into characters that are meant to get on your nerves, or these kind of like busybody characters. Like, she is so good at that character actor kind of thing, like in Sense and Sensibility or Shakespeare in Love, or obviously with her Dolores Umbridge in the Harry Potter films. Like, she is so purposeful in how irritating she could be, which I think is great. Like, she knows her instrument. She knows what she's good at, And
Oh,
sometimes,
can I just
yeah,
say
go on.
something that reminds? She's like Ben de la Creme. She's like she's terminally joyful and delightful to the point it gets on your nerves.
Yeah. And, I think sometimes maybe what she's given is two-dimensional, but she does have fun with it. And I think she proves, like, in The Crown, and especially here at Vera Drake, that, like, when she is given more of a challenge, that she is more than up to the task. This is a devastating performance, and I think so much of the good stuff in the second half where she gets found out is just really remarkable work. But even before that, I think just watching her, like, in the beginning, knowing where all this is going, especially on like a rewatch, that cheerfulness and her attending to all the people around town that she takes care of, all that sort of peppiness is kind of painful to watch, knowing where it's going, because, it's established right at the start there, like, all she wants to do is be of service to people. And she's such a perfect fit for this role, like the spunkiness and this sort of compulsive need to keep busy. It's so natural for her that the layer of this being a performance for me is fully blurred, sort of like in a Catalina sense as well. And that's what some of the best Mike Leigh films do, is to remove any of those layers of artifice and make you just believe you're just watching these everyday working class people's lives who are flawed and maybe stubborn sometimes, but just very human ultimately. And that's what this performance is to be. Like, she's showing such a deep level of vulnerability, and also knowing when to hold back and when not to hold back, and just fully make you sympathize with this poor woman who only wants to be a kind, supportive person, and like try to give these young women a chance ultimately. And yeah, it is kind of fascinating in the sense that, like, she is a supportive character in a lot of people's lives, but also she is the one that we are focusing on here. So she is, of course, the lead, but it's just kind of fascinating to have that kind of person. It's like she is a very active participant in her life and she's doing all these things, but a lot of what she's doing is just being a support for other people. And we are choosing to focus on her in this case.
It's a film about a person that would be a supporting character in so many other people's films.
Right.
And she sort of, I don't know if this makes sense, but she sort of plays Vera as a supporting character in the sense that she's sort of always conceding the scene to her scene partners. She's a very generous player in that regard, and she's always doing that thing that supporting actors with limited screen time do, that is sort of imbuing little choices to give you a bigger understanding of that person that you wouldn't get because you don't have enough text to develop them. Like, there is this moment when Eddie Marson's character, the sort of suitor to her daughter, to her spinster daughter, mentions that that his mother died in the Blitz, and you would expect, after you've lived with this character a little bit, that she would be very warm and coddling and supporting him, but it's such a dry delivery, the way she performs that moment, and you suddenly, oh yeah, these people lived through the war. These people are used to death in those terms. Their souls bear those calluses, and suddenly she tells you so much just from that ounce of restraint in a scene where that is very easily negligible. If you're not paying attention, you don't really notice it, but it's there. Or the way she's so economic with her movements. Like every time she moves, it's very purposeful, at least in the first half, which is such an interesting contrast to her voice, which is always very high and very cheery, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very grandmotherly. You're always imagining a grandmother talking to her grandchildren, comforting them, etc. But her physical demeanor, it's really the demeanor of someone who has done work and has worked with their body their entire lives and sort of innately understands the cost of needless movement or needless effort. She manages to tell us this entire history of Vera Drake just by observing how she goes about her house, or how she talks to her children, or how she talks to her clients. It's methodical, it's automatic, it's lived in. I think that's the thing. You feel that she has lived in this character, which is of course a consequence of Mike Leigh's methods of doing workshops and doing lots of improvisation. And it really pays off in moments like this. And Staunton isn't the only one in the film that does that. You get a sense of that from most of the actors playing her family, or Eddie Marsan, who is just, I think, amazing in this small role of the suitor who is so unexpectedly kind and understanding of who will probably be his future mother-in-law. Like the moment when she's leaving a girl's house and you see a man violently knocking on the door, and she suddenly looks back, and she doesn't do anything, but you see her pondering it and assessing the situation, and that is the image that has been used a lot for the promotional material of the film. And it is such an interesting moment of seeing her as an observer. Again, she's a very active listener, but she's also a very active observer. It's these stolen moments that feel so intimate, that feel like we're getting to know Vera as in ways that we seldom know people in our own lives. And Staunton takes up to the challenge and makes it look weirdly effortless in this first act, because the second act is, of course, very strenuous, but with a purpose to it, because, well, it has to be. This entire woman's life just crumbles. And I love reading on the film the fact that Staunton was the only person that knew when the police shows up at her house what was going on, because the other actors didn't know what film they were doing beyond a portrait of post-war London life.
I think that's such a brilliant directorial choice on Mike Leigh's part to do that, because all those reactions when that happens are real, like genuine surprise. Yeah.
And the way her face falls. Because it's that thing, I know why you're here. She knows her time is up. It's almost as if she was anticipating this moment her entire life, and it's now. And her biggest concern in that moment is almost how this will inconvenience her loved ones that are in the other room. And that could feel so melodramatic as a story beat.
Yeah.
But Staunton and Leigh sort of go against that. They really ground it in a character reality, in a reality you accept as this is that person's organic response to it. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like the film is asking for your tears. It's earning them. It's not manipulating you into them. And part of it comes from that you mentioned, like the shock of the other actors feeling so genuine, while Vera seems like she's crushed but accepting of what's to come. It's so haunting. And Staunton is such a petite woman, and in those moments it looks like she's even shrinking
within herself. That family gathering scene where the police show up, like I almost have to leave the room just watching it, just in the tension of seeing and her family's reactions, and just her very cheerful smile that turns into that look of fear and guilt, and realizing that there's no way of getting out of this. It's just shattering, and she doesn't overplay it at all. It's that, again, that could have been very melodramatic, and saying, I know why you're here, because of what I do. Like, it breaks your heart. And when the police question her and what it is that she does. The way that she frames it is saying, I help young girls out. And he's like, how do you help them out? And she just gradually is falling apart and says she was having a party and that her family will be upset. And it's just so devastating in her line delivery, and her, like, obviously her chin is quivering and like her barely being able to speak above a whisper when she's answering their questions. And it's that huge close up of her face as she's just like welling up with emotion when he tells her that a girl nearly died because of her. And it's just like she's white as a ghost and she's shaking. But she also still has this kind of politeness in a way in her expressions and calling them dear. And it's like this woman doesn't see herself as anything but a helper and a motherly figure. And now she'll be branded as a criminal because of what they are calling a criminal act. But she still believes very firmly that she was just helping these girls who have nowhere else to turn to. And I do love that she doesn't make Vera's guilt feel like regretting what she did. It's just obviously that she's now caught and that her family will be, broken up a little bit because of this. It's just the sadness, I think, that she was finally caught.
If anything, she's guilty about what this will do to her family, not necessarily what this will do to her. And okay, I know that a lot of people value when films are apolitical or balanced, both sides, whatever. I appreciate that this film really supports Vera's point of view by contrasting, showing the class imbalance in these situations, because we see a rich girl, the daughter of one of Vera's clients, played by Sally Hawkins, who is raped and who gets pregnant. And there are all these systems in place that she can use to get an abortion in ways that women in the lower classes, working class women, or in one of the cases we see an immigrant, can't access. So the film is really corroborating that view that she is helping women in need. Because if not her, who will? Because the systems aren't in place to help those kinds of women. They are designed to forget about them. And I really appreciate how the film does that, and how a subplot that could be considered negligible, or I can imagine a producer wanting to cut it. It really informs how we see Vera and how the film sees Vera and invites us to acknowledge what she does. And in the end, she's completely shattering as she's taken to the police station, and just the pain of removing her ring, because she can have her wedding ring when she goes into custody, and how lost she looks. She's not really being pitiful or asking for our pity, but you can't help but almost want to help this woman that has dedicated her life to helping others. And you see that effect on the actors playing the authorities.
Yeah.
I almost wonder how that was developed between the actors. If it was a reaction to Staunton herself, because it is difficult to imagine being in the same room as someone experiencing what Staunton is projecting, and not feel an inkling of empathy or sympathy for what she's going through. Again, as everything in Vera Drake, it feels earned.
Yeah, and it's not overtly spelled out, and also the class differences, like you said, aren't spelled out directly, but you could definitely see the intention there. I also wanted to note the smash cut from Vera being fingerprinted to her then telling her husband that she's sorry. I think that really got to me, because she's realizing now that this is going to not only be devastating for her, but for her entire family. And she now has to admit what she's done and what she's kept from him for decades. I think what I really respect about the performance, again, is that she is sorry for the impact that this will have on her family and the people she takes care of. And like, again, when she eventually appears before the judge and looks to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown, almost like fully lost in her own mind, barely keeping it together, and seeing her just like silently listening to the lawyer and the judge and like staring into space. You just feel this immense sympathy, I think. And you do want to reach out and care for her in the way that she's cared for others. But she's not getting that respect, really. Even like her son is yelling at her and calling her dirty at one point and wrong. But even there, I think there's like this look of understanding in her eyes and almost a guilt that she's put him in the position of being angry with her. And after that, they have this beautiful moment where he just says that he's scared for her. The dialogue in this movie, whether improvised or written, is so, it cuts right through you.
Those scenes with her son are some of the best in the film. I love our son's anger and lack of understanding seems to hurt her more than anything the authorities are doing to her. In their second scene, when he says he's scared for her, at the beginning of it, the way she's sitting on the sofa, she's angling away from him. It's almost as she's expecting a strike. Not maybe physical, I don't think so, but another verbal lashing from him. And to see this woman look that helpless before her son it is so crushing. And at the end, when he says, "I love you, Mom," it seems that is the breaking point. It's when that emotion can't be held anymore inside her, and it starts to seep out. And what a tearjerker of a movie this is.
I know, but earns your tears. Yeah, it doesn't feel cheap, And then her just total emptiness after she's been sentenced, and she's now in prison, and how it just cuts to the family at home without her, just silently having dinner, and that's where we leave it. It's a whopper of an ending. Like, it really haunts you, I think.
Her absence is really felt.
Absolutely. So, a really astonishing performance. One that I think the Academy couldn't ignore, even if the film itself may have been slightly difficult to get through for a widespread Academy perhaps, but just her performance is undeniable. So, shall we move on to our final losing nominee?
Let's go meet some colorful hair.
Yes, get a little more color compared to the grays of Vera Drake. Okay, Kate Winslet in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So excited to get into this one. Kate Winslet getting her 4th Oscar nomination, only her 2nd in lead, but we last talked about her with her, obviously, blockbuster work in Titanic. This is 7 years later, but she also picked up her 3rd nomination in between in supporting actress for Iris, playing the younger version of Judi Dench's character. Kind of a forgotten nomination compared to the rest of her work, but still solid work. But anyway, after Titanic, Kate was actively trying to seek out more interesting work, not so much the movie star kind of thing. She did quirkier stuff like Hideous Kinky and Holy Smoke. She did quite a few period films as well, like Quills and Iris, Enigma, which I think all that is important to note because with Eternal Sunshine, this was part of her effort to open things up more in her career and avoid being typecast as that English Rose type or like the period piece girl. And this is an American production, and she actually got the part because she apparently pushed back on some elements of the script, which Michel Gondry, the director, really liked. I think maybe because of the nature of her character. So here we go. Eternal Sunshine is a sci-fi comedy, drama, romance about Joel Barish, played by Jim Carrey, who's an introverted man who was in a relationship with an extroverted woman named Clementine, Kate Winslet, who frequently changes her hair color. And Joel is devastated to one day find out that after their relationship went sour, Clementine has elected to have her memories of Joel erased from her mind using this innovative technology from a firm called Lacuna. So in response to that, Joel decides to undergo the same procedure, which involves him being put to sleep while these technicians erase his memories with Clementine. The science of it all isn't really important, but anyway, we see as the technicians erase memories from most recent all the way back to their first date, how they had a lot of ups and downs, and Joel is gradually realizing through this that he doesn't actually want to lose Clementine, and he tries to basically outrun the technicians within his mind to prevent her from being fully erased. So we've got a big one here. This is a very important film to me, and I think it is for you too, knowing how you've written about it. But tell me your thoughts on Kate Winslet overall and Eternal Sunshine.
I really admire Kate Winslet. She's not maybe one of my favorite actresses as she's for some people, but I really admire her. You mentioned Holy Smoke. I think she should have won an Oscar for that one. Sorry, Hilary Swank. We'll get to that. And she came straight out the gate with Heavenly Creatures and Sense and Sensibility. It's amazing to see how she has grown. I wish, sort of, that in her post-Eternal Sunshine career, she had maybe strayed a little farther from Oscar buzz films. I think she got stuck in a lot of prestige but otherwise dull movies. And it is a pity because, as we can see in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, when she takes risks, she is really damn interesting and magnetic and complex and able to respond to challenging ideas and deliver amazing work. Because to me, Clementine is the peak of her career. I think it's their best performance ever. It's a performance that, trying to put myself in the shoes of either a director or an actor, it is almost inconceivable how you approach her. Because she's not just playing Clementine, she's playing Clementine the person that we see glimpses of in the very rare instances where the film cuts to her outside of Joel's purview. But she's also playing the memory of Clementine that is remembered by someone who loved her but whose love has turned into hate by the end. And but she's also going back because the film is traversing through their relationship in inverse order. So you meet the memory Clementine at her worst, and you sort of fall back in love with her. So she has to trace that journey in reverse motion. And at the same time, Clementine, the memory, is becoming self-aware. So she is switching between just a passive memory of Joel and a reflection of Joel trying to save herself. And it is so complicated to imagine. I would like to see her script, to see the notes or color coded or whatever she put into it, because keeping track of how to play these characters is just I can't imagine it. And the fact she somehow makes it feel even more complex than what is on the page is a testament to what an amazing performer she is. As I said, this is to me is the best thing Kate Winslet has ever done, and it hits at a time when the manic pixie dream girl was really starting to become a thing in cinema, and it's such a stark repudiation of that. It is really deepening that and denying that sort of idealization. It's human, it's complex. You would think this sort of thing would become abstract down some layers, but she's always extremely specific. She's always extremely human in her approach. Even when she's playing an idea, you never feel she is this slippery inconsistency that you can't quite understand. I respect actors that make their characters a mystery, but I also respect ones that take what could have been a mystery and make it so open, so readable. She communicates everything about her character, even if we see the film through Joel's eyes. Most of the time, I almost feel that I get out of it knowing Clementine more than I know him. It's that impressive what she accomplishes, and it's it's funny that if you maybe read on the page, you would think that Winslet would be more appropriate for a Joel type character, and Jim Carrey would be more appropriate for a Clementine type character. But they surprise you, and they show you that typecasting is stupid, and you have to trust your actors to deliver, and she does.
I agree. Yeah, completely. I absolutely adore this movie. I've loved it since it was released, and I've come back to it many times in my life, and I feel like each time has sort of become more resonant for me as I've matured and had relationships and maybe wanted to erase certain memories. It's all it's all tapping into something very truthful, I think. And yeah, this is one of those movies that could have easily fallen apart or focused on the wrong elements. Like I said, like the science of it, like that doesn't matter.
Who
But I
cares?
feel like it's right. Thank you. Yes. It's always rooted in this like emotional truth for me of how relationships are hard and relationships can be work, but they can still be worth it. And you can grow from being honest and available and kind to your partner. Like it really speaks to me, especially as someone who can identify with Joel more than I'd care to admit at times. And this is for me where I fell in love with Kate Winslet. Like it was this and kind of Titanic for me too that were pretty foundational. And this performance again is so tricky, like you said, because for most of the film she is playing a memory. Like, yes, she has the beginning and the end and like a handful of scenes peppered in the middle where it is the real her, but almost all of it is just his memories of her. And I think despite that, she forms this character with all the highs and lows, the playfulness, the way she banters with Joel, the way she gets him to come out of his shell, how she reacts to some of his moodiness and his shitty comments towards her and his judgments, and like just wanting to find someone to love and like having these deep feelings and feeling like a misfit and having these very intense mood swings. It's so impressive, so assured. Also, her American accent, I think, is pretty flawless. You know, keeping track of all that and doing an accent, pretty astonishing. And I also think her chemistry with Jim Carrey is pretty instant and so watchable. I think he's honestly one of my favorite co-stars of hers, like romantic co-leads that she's ever been with. And for like, you would never think to put them together necessarily, but that's why typecasts are stupid, like you said. Like it just works.
It is a captivating performance from minute one. When
Yeah.
okay, again, this film is difficult to describe because the film starts after both of them have gone through the process of erasing each other from their minds.
Yep.
So you start the film in the morning when Joel feels an unexplainable will to go to Montauk. And there he crosses paths with this woman with colorful hair and an orange sweatshirt, and they are immediately sort of drawn to each other, but neither actor plays it like a meet cute.
Yeah.
It's she's almost confrontational talking to him, while she's very forthcoming in the sense that you can sense Clementine wants his attention, but she's also contradictorily very abrasive, and she almost uses self-deprecating wording against herself as an hostile, as a weapon to draw him away, but then she draws him back. And the film has that wonderful device of the music only starting when they're talking, and when they're not, it's complete silence. Again, it's a meet uncute that shouldn't work. And yet you can really picture it instantly, these people having a very complicated but perhaps worthwhile life together. And then of course you cut from that first meeting immediately to Joel crying in the car after having found out that Clementine erased him. And as the film goes, and our next few meetings with Clementine are either when she doesn't recognize him in the bookshop because she works at Barnes and Noble, I believe, and then a completely lost and panicking Clementine with Elijah Wood, who is a worker from Lacuna, who has stolen Joel's documents on Clementine and is using them to seduce her. And you see a completely different side of Clementine in those scenes because she's in a complete panic. She has sort of a hole inside her that she can't articulate, and she doesn't know how to feel. It's the way she portrays being so lost for a character that in all instances where we see her seems otherwise very self-aware and full of self-knowledge. She seems to understand exactly who she is, and to see her losing that in those moments with Elijah Wood is really heartbreaking, and it tells us so much about what Clementine values, even about herself. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, because before that, we start to see her through his memories, and we started at the worst of it. And one of the things I love most about her performance is how honestly prickly and cruel and mean Clementine is. Joel is too. And now one comment from him, like the comment about him not being able to imagine her as a mother, suddenly it's like a spark that ignites the bomb.
Yeah.
And it feels so real. You can imagine, just from seeing their interaction, you can imagine 50 other arguments like that.
Yeah, I love her forcefulness. Like, again, even in that beginning, which is technically the end of her sort of introducing herself to him, and is just like so drawn to him, and for reasons she doesn't quite understand. But she doesn't shield away anything about herself, and saying, I'm a vindictive little bitch, truth be told. Just like these little comments, these little quips. It's like she communicates all of that in one scene, like why he was also maybe drawn to her before all the memory erasing, but also why they would kind of repel each other over time, because they are such opposites, and they do sort of complete each other, where she brings out his full self and he kind of grounds her in a way. But those differences are also what makes their connections sort of break over time. And so then when we do get that first memory scene of her, which is the last kind of breakup moment, essentially, the viciousness of their final conversation shows just how bad things have gotten, where she kind of playfully is like, I kind of sort of wrecked your car, and are casually insulting each other back and forth, like when she says he's only upset because he thinks in his wormy brain that she slept with someone else. And there's like this kind of smug look on her face, like she knows that this is going to get a rise out of him. And he says like, oh, that's how you get people to like you. And just the look of disgust and exhaustion on her face is so good. Like she is now fully over it. I love that scene, and I think she's very skillful in showing the sort of, I don't know if I would diagnose her in any way, but sort of the bipolar aspects of Clementine, essentially, and how quickly she will turn on a dime when the conversation isn't really going her way, or he's not responding to her energy, like you said, when she says she wants to have a kid and he doesn't think it's a good idea because he's not ready for that, but also he's like, I don't think you're ready for that, which really, again, sends her from 0 to 60. But it doesn't feel mannered to me. Like there is this sort of underlying insecurity there, which like she wants more from Joel, and she wants him to be appreciative of her, and she, just wants to be loved. And when she doesn't feel like she is getting that respect, it's like she just like pushes him away before he can hurt her any further, in a sense. And also the point where she reveals at one point that she felt like an outcast when she was a little girl. Like we are just getting like these little pieces of her that make sense with the picture that we've seen so far, even within memory. So it's, I mean, to your point about like wanting to see her script, I also want to see like what the shooting schedule was, because how was she able to, keep track of where we are in the story, and like, like you said, becoming more self-aware within the memories. It's wild.
That moment under the sheets when she has that confession about her insecurities, as you said, it makes perfect sense with what you've seen so far, because even when she's attacking Joel in the memory of the breakup, you sort of sense a will to destroy yourself as much as sort of attack him.
Yeah.
She seems like someone who really knows herself, but at the same time maybe doesn't like everything she knows about herself. She's very forthcoming in recognizing her own impulsiveness, her own want for attention. She sort of wants to fascinate others up to a certain point, but then she also wants to be seen as a person, and not just a fascinating idea. That there is that contradiction. And Winslet plays it as if Clementine is completely aware of that, completely aware of her own contradictions, and she doesn't necessarily like it, but she's also not going to apologize for it. She's not going
Right.
to pretend or to try to be someone else. She knows who she is. She may not like everything, but she's not going to change for you. And it is such a complicated reality to exploit, to articulate. And Winslet, the fact that Winslet does it through this fragmented structure is unbelievable. And again, when you get to that moment beneath the sheets, when she is really being naked about that, when she's really showing her insecurities and all of this that's sort of being underlying so much of her behavior, you really get why Joel at that point he wants to keep that memory. It's sort of the turning point where, and you get it, because it's that thing in relationships, even when they end badly, at least to me, I think I've learned to value getting to know another person, even if at the end we sort of hate each other. There is something special about being intimate with another person, about knowing things that are mostly secret to everybody else except to them, which is part of what I think Eternal Sunshine gets so right about relationships and about human behavior. You certainly want to erase the pain, but the pain and the marvels that came before the pain are all part of you, which is, I think, what makes Clementine so lost in the things we see her with Elijah Wood, because to eliminate that is to eliminate part of yourself. And that is why Joel doesn't want to lose that memory of Clementine, which starts that entire sequence where suddenly the Clementine inside Joel's memories becomes self-aware, and they start like a heist movie trying to run away together. It makes sense in the movie. I don't even know why I'm trying to explain it. I think all of your listeners have already watched it.
Yeah.
But I think Carrie and Winslet do something very special in scenes like that under the sheets, which is they make you feel like a voyeur. They make you feel like you're seeing something you shouldn't see because it's so intimate.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is to do with how Gondry shoots it, but it has to do a lot with how they are playing that moment. They're really playing it as if they're sort of they're taking a scalp and opening themselves and showing their insides. And you sort of feel like you're not supposed to be seeing them. This is only for who the character trusts, and the character doesn't trust you. This is really stupid on my part, but it's sort of the emotion that gets out of the film. I swear I'm not crazy. I don't think characters are real people, but yeah,
it's so wonderfully intimate, and even like the stuff with childhood memories from Joel and they're going back in time, all that stuff. Like she's great there, like when she's got this fabulous dress on and she's like, I love this dress. And she's like looking at the wallpaper and like flashing Joel her underwear. I love the energy she brings to that scene where she is becoming more self-aware of what's happening, just the playfulness of it. They just play off of each other so well. But then even when she's like sort of comforting him, after he's had this incident that's kind of traumatic for him involving killing this or like, smashing this animal with a hammer. I don't know, it's just really, really sweet. And also the score really helps in that respect. I wish that was nominated as well, John Bryan's score. But for her, I think the other scene that people kind of cite is at Barnes and Noble, which, is where she lays it out to him. This great quote, of course, where she says, too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm going to make them alive, but I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours. I think just like the self-awareness there that she displays in that moment, and without making it feel too rehearsed as like a speech, I think it's great because she is reflecting on how her life has become kind of a pattern, and she knows herself very well, and she knows how she's seen by people, and that she attracts a certain type of guy who projects a lot onto her. And I just think Kate Winslet has an intelligence as a performer that you believe she would be that receptive of how she comes across to people.
And you're mentioning the scene where where she's in his memories and she's got this new dress. She's his babysitter. I really like how, and this is not a dig at Winslet, how Clementine sort of becomes a bit flatter in those moments.
Yeah.
Like, she becomes more the quirky character you would suppose she would be. Like
Mm-hmm.
when she's with the red hair and they're in the middle of nowhere, they're on a hike, and they're sort of planning where to go, and she's like, "I'm impulsive," and you feel,
You know me, I'm impulsive.
this
Yeah.
is really starting to become Joel talking to himself.
Yeah.
And Winslet, again, it's that negotiation between who Clementine is and who Joel is seeing her as,
Right.
which sort of reaches its culmination in when you get to their first meeting. I love how they play it not as a switch, which had sort of been the thing in scenes past, where they're living the memory and suddenly Clementine makes a comment and they start to talk about how to get out, how to escape. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they're sort of both weary in that moment because again Clementine is a reflection of Joel. She's a memory that is conscious of her impending annihilation, and they're sort of accepted what's going to happen, and it's like they're savoring this last moment of their first meeting, and they're rueful, they're weary, they almost seem tired in how they talk to each other. It's remarkable how you get their instant connection through sort of their shared loneliness at the moment they first met, and their melancholy about losing each other. The fact that the beginning and the end can coexist so seamlessly is a testament to how incredibly Carrie and Winslet work together in this film.
Yeah. And just the script itself, and I think just even her line reading where she's saying, "This is it, Joel, it's going to be gone soon." I've always remembered her reading of that line, just that melancholy feeling, and to also have that be the beginning in a sense. It's really like such a remarkable performance to watch because she has no reference point for how to play something like this, obviously. Like, it could have been a disaster, but it comes off so beautifully. And then once we are back in the present and they both find out that they went through this procedure and that they had this whole relationship together, like, she's obviously confused and he's confused and she doesn't know exactly how to proceed. But the moment that I didn't even notice on my many previous watches of this movie is when he calls out to her in the hallway after she leaves. And the way she plays her response to that, I think, is so perfect. Like, it's a very small moment. This comes from someone who's watched this many times and is just picking up these newer details. But it says everything because she turns around with this sense of relief, I think, rather than surprise. It's like, yes, I also want to give this another shot. Like, he's calling out to her and she's like, yes, this feels right. I should give this another chance. I just think that's really beautiful, subtle acting from her.
It really shows how those two sort of command the tone of the film
Mm-hmm.
in very delicate ways. I admire how Winslet, as you say, that subtlety and how she doesn't dramatize this final interaction between them too much because it would be easy to want to either end this film in a note of tragedy or in a note
Mm-hmm.
of triumph. And Eternal Sunshine, through these two actors, and especially through Winslet, is neither. There is a relief, but there is also sort of a defeatedness to her after hearing all of those things that he said about her. It's almost like she's accepted that this is how their relationship will end, even if they started again.
Yeah.
And but she sort of accepts it. She still wants it.
Yeah. I think it is just like we kind of have a clean slate almost that we both said out the worst things we could possibly say about each other. And now we can maybe move forward, So there may be some slight hopefulness there. Or they're doomed to just repeat the past. Who knows?
And even if they repeat the past, maybe it will be worth it nevertheless.
Right. So very, really bittersweet. I adore this movie. I could talk about it forever, but I'm so glad that she got the nominations she got for this. I wish she was, again, like a little more competitive, I guess, within this race, because I think she was considered like fourth or fifth ultimately. But I think even despite getting a nomination, it's almost underrated just how good she is in this. Like she has a lot of obvious great markers of greatness, but like the level of difficulty here, I don't know if people in the industry even appreciate it, if you know what I'm saying.
Because when you take it as face value and you don't really think about it, it seems more of a comedic performance without very heightened emotions or great crying scenes. Again, when she has an opportunity to go really big with the character's despondency, she restrains herself, and I think it's easy to dismiss Clementine as the quirky girl other men have dismissed her as in her life.
Yeah.
I think there is something to that. Can you imagine if Eternal Sunshine had come out 1 year later in that 2005 Best Actress race?
I wish. All I could say is I wish. I also wish Jim Carrey had contended. I almost wonder if like a Jim Carrey performance in this would be more appreciated nowadays, perhaps, than it was in 2004.
I think the Academy is more receptive to these sorts of films nowadays, or at least it seems so.
Yeah, certainly.
So maybe, yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to our winner, shall we? Hilary Swank in $1 Million Baby. All right, so Hilary Swank winning her second Oscar here in 6 years, joining an elite club of actresses by this point who had Best Actress wins, multiple Best Actress wins, including, I got my list here, Louise Reiner, Bette Davis, Olivia de Havilland, Vivien Leigh, Ingrid Bergman, Elizabeth Taylor, Katharine Hepburn, Glenda Jackson, Jane Fonda, Sally Field, and Jodie Foster. So she's joining some very fine company here. So since Boys Don't Cry, Hilary is putting in some work, obviously getting more opportunities. She's in The Gift, she's in The Affair of the Necklace, Insomnia, The Core, kind of all over the place. And there was a feeling that she wasn't quite living up to expectations, but she's working with some auteurs. She's also in a TV movie called Iron Jawed Angels, which she got Globe nominated for and SAG nominated. So then with $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood wanted to cast her, but he was concerned about her figure being so small. And so she took that as a challenge. She gained like 20 pounds of muscle. She trained 5 hours a day to get in fighting shape. So, it's a lot like how she really put herself to work before Boys Don't Cry to really immerse herself in the character and prove that she was right for it. What's wild to look back on it too is that they filmed this movie in the summer of 2004. So like if you were making year in advance predictions, this movie hadn't even been shot until the summer and it was ready for release in December. Just a really remarkable turnaround, even by Clint's standards. But anyway, $1 Million Baby is about an older trainer named Frankie, played by Clint Eastwood, who works out of a boxing gym training up-and-coming boxers. One day, this young woman named Maggie, played by Hilary, comes in and hopes she can have him train her, but he says he doesn't train girls. After she keeps showing up again and again, he finally does relent and takes her on, and she gradually proves her strength in the ring. Meanwhile, we have Eddie, aka Scrap Iron, Morgan Freeman, Frankie's friend, who tries to look out for Maggie's best interest. Maggie also has a family back in the Ozarks who treat her horribly, and the film is largely about her trying to make a name for herself and prove the doubters wrong, although it leads to a very dramatic turn of events in the third act. So let's talk our winner here, Claudio. Hilary Swank, $1 Million Baby. We have a Best Picture winner lining up with the Best Actress winner for the first time since Gwyneth in Shakespeare in Love. But yeah, thoughts on Hilary overall and her second Oscar-winning performance here?
As a follower of the film experience since a tender age of novice cinephilia, I sort of grew to resent Hilary Swank a little bit for Annette Bening. For this one, probably most especially because this is the second Oscar for an actress who doesn't really have the career that seems to warrant such a generous validation from the Academy. But with the years, I think I've grown to appreciate Hilary Swank more. I think she has a limited range, but that can be said about many great actresses. I do think she needs to be pushed by her directors or scripts, and that doesn't always happen. And when it doesn't happen, I think she can be a bit of an uninteresting screen presence. But when it does work, I think she's remarkable again. I think she's incredible in Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah.
It's almost disappointing that it came so early in her career because she never reached such heights afterward. But still, to deliver that performance would make you a great actor no matter what you do afterwards. And again, as I said, I have liked her in things since. I think she's underrated in things like Conviction and The Ombudsman. But yeah, the second Oscar really sort of sours one's opinion on Hilary Swank. Because, and I can't even imagine living through this in 2004 when you had these 4 other performances, 2 of them by people that had been nominated multiple times before and had lost, including losing against Hilary Swank. And again, I mean, Oscar wins are never needed, but was this really needed? Ugh. And I have a complicated relationship with Clint Eastwood, as I gather probably a lot of people have. I respect his eye as a director. I think he's got great classicist instincts in terms of rhythm, in terms of composition, blocking. Because thank heaven someone still knows how to block motion pictures, even if it's probably not long for this role at this point. But I also think his methodology, I think it results in very limited performances out of his actors. Because he does so few takes, he gives so little direction, and I have seen plenty of the actors he's worked with talking about the level of trust and the level of responsibility you feel in one of his sets, because you will not have a lot of chances to nail it, so you have to do it on a first try. And I respect that. That's why it can turn around a film so quickly as it did with $1 Million Baby, but I also think it leaves its mark on the film. And I do think it leaves its mark on this film and on Swank's performance, which is really good. I think it's a solid work, but I think watching it, I constantly feel that there could be more depth to it, and maybe a longer shooting process, a different directorial approach, I think could have pulled Swank into true greatness that I think she doesn't quite achieve here, even if she's very good. And which makes watching it a bit frustrating. And I hate Paul Haggis' script. I'm sorry people who love Paul. I'm sorry, Academy, you love Paul Haggis' scripts. I don't. Yeah. But she's good. I don't want to be too negative because she's really good in this. It's just, you constantly feel she could be better and the film could be more interesting.
Yeah. This was such an interesting one to rewatch because I've always really liked $1 Million Baby. I understand some people think it's a masterpiece. I'm not quite there. The thing is, it actually went down a bit for me on this rewatch, and I'm sorry to say that also includes Hilary's performance too. Like, I still think she is putting in great work, and I think her efforts to transform her body really do show in the film, and she does make for a believable fighter, not just physically but like emotionally too. You get that inner fighter spirit, the kind of person who really has had to scrape by her whole life just to get a shot at having a good life. So yeah, I think it's a good performance. I'm just really not fully sold on her winning for this, and I don't think it's fully her fault, like you said. I think just the way the film is structured, and people may disagree with this, and that's fine, but on this rewatch, I really felt that the way the film is structured to be a disservice to Maggie's story, because so much of it is about Frankie changing from being that guy who doesn't want to train girls to then finding this sort of surrogate daughter in Maggie to replace the daughter that he's estranged from. And then for Maggie, she does find acceptance and some level of happiness and purpose, but I think the writing just doesn't allow for as much dynamics as I would like. So I don't think it's entirely her fault, and I think if you looked at individual scenes, I think she really brings it. But sort of in what you're saying too, I can't get as excited by it because it just doesn't, I don't think she's offered the opportunity to fully explore Maggie as a three-dimensional person.
It's really striking, as you said, rewatching the film and realizing how much this is Frankie's story.
Yeah, very
And
much so.
how much the last 30 minutes of the film basically turned Maggie into a looking glass for Frankie. She becomes a script device for his development more than a person, which is really harmful to our understanding of her. And as you say, it's in moment by moment, she's quite remarkable, but when you sum it all up, it doesn't feel as substantial as it should. But at the same time, I'm being very negative, but I do like a lot of things about the performance. Like, this film is so
Yeah.
gloomy visually, especially, though I really appreciate the cinematography of it, but also in the tone that Eastwood is working with as Frankie. It's very introspective, very quiet, very somber register that is sort of reflected on the cinematography full of deep shadows. This film almost seems like it's harkening back to post-war noir in its language.
Yeah.
And there comes Hilary Swank, which you could expect her playing a fighter. She would go for stoicism, or she would go for a more, I don't know, a repudiation of femininity or whatever, or more overtly masculine characterization. But she is so, and I don't mean this as a pejorative, she's so soft when she appears. She's like a ray of sunshine bursting through the film's shadows, and she has that fighting spirit, but that fighting spirit doesn't translate itself in a hardened personality. I find that a very interesting, very powerful choice on Swank's part. It is in reflection of the script, but I think she brings something to it. She's very luminous, especially in these first scenes, and I do think she and Eastwood bring the best out of each other as scene partners. There is a real need to prove herself, and when she achieves it, when you see she's made him proud, it's never, a reaction is never stoic. She really shows you her enthusiasm that she has achieved this, and it feels very antithetical to the sort of somberness of the rest of the film. She makes you understand why Maggie could change a person, why Maggie could change Frankie. And again, I wish we could get more inside Maggie, into what makes her tick. But
Yeah.
she is delivering what the structure of the film, what Eastwood's approach needs from her. My point is that I wish she wanted more from her.
I agree with that. But yeah, I think when she does like first approach Frankie in the beginning and he's rejecting her, she has a similar way of carrying herself and dealing with rejection as she did in Boys Don't Cry, which is very different, but the vibe is similar in how she's like playing this character who's trying to prove their value and wanting to be given a shot against the odds of a happier life. And there is a certain downtrodden feeling that she brings to it at times of being counted out for so long. And then when she is offered a bit of a lifeline, like when, Morgan Freeman's character is giving her some pointers and she kind of like brightens up and smiles to herself on the bus. Like, it is kind of simple stuff that's asked of her in the beginning, but I think she does enough to pretty quickly endear you to Maggie. And I think the scene where Frankie finally does agree to trade her is good for her, where she has that monologue about her shitty family and how she's been waitressing since she was 13 and how she should probably just go find herself a trailer and deep fry some Oreos. But as she says, the problem is this is the only thing I ever felt good doing. That whole scene where she's saying, like, I've seen you looking at me, and he's like, out of pity. And she says, don't you say that if it ain't true. And saying, like, she doesn't want his charity or favors. I think all of that, there is an earnestness to it and to the character that you could be kind of snooty about and think it's too simplistic, maybe. But I think she plays that earnestness with a believability. And again, the way she kind of lights up when he finally agrees to train her. Yeah, she just has a really infectious spirit that you do want to follow, which is maybe easier said than done.
On a more technical level, I truly appreciate how Swank registers Maggie's development as a fighter, even in her body language. You can see the effects of Frankie's advice, of Frankie's coaching, even in how she moves through the world, and not just how she approaches each fight. And I'm not just talking about the fact that she's sort of training her footwork while she's waitressing, which I found a bit of a corny detail, but in things like when she's putting her hat on as she's leaving a diner or something like that. I found a lot of great physical detail in such moments that, to me, were more illuminating than a lot of the more Oscar clip scenes that Hilary Swank has throughout the film. And of course, there's that her first sequence with Margot Martindale, where Margot Martindale plays her white trash mother, and Maggie has bought her a house. And instead of being happy for her daughter, she's extremely hostile toward her. She's concerned about losing welfare if they know she's got this house. And she has that great line reading that people laugh at her, which is
they laugh.
Yeah. And I appreciate how Swank lets us see how much Maggie is used to this sort of interactions with her mother.
Yeah.
You would expect a more declarative line when she said, "If you don't want it, sell it." But no, it's not a provocation. It's just weary and used to dismissal. I sort of hate these sequences in the film as a piece of writing, and I think the film has very troubling class politics and even racial dynamics going on. But it's remarkable work from the actors, and it is very interesting to see Swank, who is playing most of the film against someone that is very non-demonstrative as Clint Eastwood, very quiet as Frankie, suddenly act against an explosive presence as Margot Martindale is in this tiny role. And to see her switch gears, and you see this new side of Maggie, and it's that thing of suggesting the life of the character that we're not privy to as watchers of the film. And it's a very good moment of restraint on her part, and I think it says a lot about Maggie. And while I hate that sequence, I sort of wish we got more of those moments with Maggie. I want to know her more.
I agree. I mean, I find that scene, that first one with Margot Martindale, to be very funny. I think there's just a level of camp to what Margot is bringing to it that feels like it's in a little bit of a different movie, but I love it. And yeah, Hilary plays it like, well, I don't know what I expected. Like, of course, this was going to be my mother's response. Yeah, that's just very funny. And I do wish we got a little bit more of that, even though that does get a bit cartoonish at times. But yeah, I think all the boxing scenes themselves, I think, are just really well done. Just the footwork, the choreography, there is a very scrappy quality to it, but also, like, you could tell, like, she's a killer. Like, when she really locks in, watch out. Like, you don't want to be on the other end of that. And it all comes from the fact that she has been knocked down so much in her life, and now she finally is getting her chance to kind of fight back, ultimately, at all that's been knocking her down. I think, for as simplistic as some of that is, she does tap into that really well and plays with what she's given, and that growing respect that both her and Frankie have for each other, and this pride that she inhabits when she is making him proud, I think is really warm and well done. And even when, like, Strap Iron warns her about, like, Frankie not necessarily being the guy for her to stick by for that long, she thinks about it for a beat, but then she just kind of, like, dismisses that other manager that she might be with this kind of, like, smug satisfaction.
Yeah, there's an obstinance.
Yeah. So then I think the big fight, I think, is well directed, because you definitely feel the stakes being raised and the soundscape. Like, there is a dread to it. And then the other fighter delivers that blow. And of course, when you see the chair in the way and her head connecting with it, the crunch of it, it's kind of horrifying. One of those where you have to look away. But then just the rest of the film, she is in the hospital, barely able to speak, with this sort of apparatus around her neck, and it's really hard to watch because she knows she's going to be in this state for the rest of her life, and she talks about, her regret over not turning the right way in the moment, and it's like this, the way she even vocally plays that, it's like this extended sort of cry almost, even though she's not crying. It's just kind of like a lament in a way of just feeling like I had my shot and now my shot is over, and reckoning with that.
I do feel that Swank has done enough physically to anchor Maggie that the loss of that expressivity is very felt by the audience in those last 30 minutes of the film.
Right.
You feel the absence of her, of the agency she could have with her body. But
yeah.
At the same time, I'm very frustrated by the last 30 minutes of this film. How Frankie focused they are. In some ways, it's good because it does feel like an area where Eastwood is comfortable as a storyteller, and even as a performer. I think the last 30 minutes do give him a lot to act in the excels in showing Frankie's internal struggle and how much this has changed him. But at the same time, it does feel like the film is shortchanging Maggie. And I'm not meaning because she's paralyzed. I'm meaning because in things like, we hear that her family as come and they're staying at the hotel and they haven't visited her yet. And this is said in Morgan Freeman's narration. And what we see of Maggie is we see a wide shot of her back is to us. She's in a wheelchair looking out the window, and we don't see it. But we do get Frankie's frustration with this. But we never see Maggie, the escalation to the final denial of her family's manipulation in the end. That is taken from us. It is lost in the two men's perspectives, both Morgan Freeman and Clint Eastwood's, their characters. And I wish the film valued Maggie more in that instance. I wish I could have seen the crescendo to that final show of independence against her family. But even so, when she has to play with Eastwood, I think she does deliver some good stuff. There is this sort of fear of disappointing him. And I appreciate her harshness dismissing him when her family is there. And it is probably the only point in the film where Swank's performance made me second guess what I know of Maggie, because I'm thinking, is she dismissing him because she doesn't want him to see the degradation that her family is doing? Like, is she ashamed of that? Or does she not want him to see her sort of telling them, and pardon my words, to fuck themselves? It's almost what she's saying in the end. Does she want to hide that part of herself from him? Because, again, he's sort of her surrogate father, and I think the two actors make a great work of showing how each character is sort of projecting someone from their past onto the other. And it's her harshness in that moment to him is a curious choice that I appreciate, and I appreciate how unclear it is. And it may have been clearer if she was more than a sounding board for the other characters in those last 30 minutes, but you gotta celebrate what you get.
Yeah, I agree. It does, for me, become frustrating that we sort of lose the thread emotionally, I think, a little bit with her as a full-dimensional character. And honestly, the part I do hate is when her mother and the rest of her family come with the lawyer to visit her in the hospital, and it's revealed that they went to Universal and like Disneyland before they visited, and they're all like wearing shirts. For me, it's just so cartoonish to me and so two-dimensional. I feel like there was a way to show her mother to be monstrous, even without being so on the nose and clumsy with it. Like, I don't know. The scene always ran false to me.
And without basing so much of it in what amounts to contempt for lower classes. The film has
pretty much
such contempt for them.
I know. But she does do a good job in that scene of showing her growing anger towards her mother. And just when she says, "What happened to you?" there is like that underlying disappointment that I think is quite effective. And yes, she does get to tell her off, but just that line of like, what happened to you? You could see that that really cuts through to her mother. The deathbed scene where she talks about how she did the things that she never dreamed of and basically comes to terms with her life being over and just like kind of wanting to die. A tough scene, but I do like that she doesn't sort of betray the strength and the resolve that Maggie has had. Like, she doesn't make it into this weepy melodramatic thing at all. Like, she's got that resolve that I think is pretty compelling. Like, she doesn't betray that inner strength of her character.
Yeah, I think the film posits her in a very beatific light in that moment, but Swank plays it very directly, very disaffected. She's not necessarily going along with that reading of her character. There is some integrity there that I appreciate.
Yeah. So it's a good performance on the whole. I think I definitely agree with you in the sense that you wish there were more opportunities to fully show the dimensions of Maggie, but maybe that wasn't exactly the story that Clint Eastwood wanted to tell. But now comes the interesting part where we talk about why she won this second Oscar. So the critics were very much on board with Imelda Staunton. She won with the New York Film Critics, the LA Film Critics, and the National Society of Film Critics in a tie with Hilary. Washington, Toronto, London, she won a lot. And then with Hilary, even with how late $1 Million Baby came, she got that National Society of Film Critics Award, Boston, St. Louis. Annette Bening won the National Board of Review. Kate Winslet won with the Online Film Critics, and Catalina Sandino Moreno won the Independent Spirit Award. So everyone had a little something, but Imelda was definitely the critics' fave. And then with the major precursors, Hilary Swank won the Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, and SAG, so she was the frontrunner going in. Annette Bening won the other Golden Globe for comedy, and Imelda Staunton won at BAFTA. So let's talk about it. Second Oscars don't come easy, and this is a very competitive group. So why do we think Hilary Swank won from this lineup?
I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to what film they prefer. In this field of five, she was obviously in the Academy's favorite film of the year. And I do wonder how the late release of the film sort of rocked the boat, because in some ways people had time to maybe taking the other contenders for granted over the season and over the sort of preseason almost. But with Hilary Swank, she hit right at the moment of voting. People's instant love for that film, it's right at the right moment to maybe make people forget the other contenders that they'd grown accustomed to a little bit. Like Sandino Moreno, her film premiered at Berlin, almost a year out from the Oscars. And Vera Drake was at Venice. It is that frustrating thing of opening a film as late as possible that so many distributors try to do. And sometimes you want to roll your eyes and think of a lot of recent examples where that didn't work, like A Most Violent Year opening on December 31st. But then you remember things like this where, oh, it actually did work, and it kind of won Hilary Swank a second Oscar in a career that didn't seem poised at all for a second Oscar. I think it really comes down to the love for the film, and maybe even the love for the role. Of all of these characters, she's the one that is you can support and like in the most uncomplicated manner. To me, that is usually the attraction, because I like characters and performances that challenge me as a viewer. But I don't think that's what the Academy likes.
No, they don't. They don't like to be challenged. Yeah. But this is a complicated one for me. I think it is easy to say, oh, she was at the Best Picture winner, her film was the strongest, but, you know, we've seen Renee Zellweger lose when Chicago won Best Picture, Kate Winslet lost when Titanic won, Annette Bening famously lost when American Beauty won, so it's not always a direct correlation. But I think what made it different for Hilary was that she really committed to the role, and the effort is very evident on screen. You know, she's playing a very sympathetic character, to your point. And I think Hilary, as an actress in her career, is proving that she wasn't a one-hit wonder. You know, and I think the other four just had enough negatives that made it easy to get behind Hilary. Like Kate Winslet, it didn't feel like it was quite her time yet, at least not for this role by Oscar standards, at least. Catalina, foreign language performance, subtle. The nomination was the reward, was kind of the resounding statement for her. And then I think her strongest competition was Annette and Imelda. And I think there wasn't very much passion maybe behind Annette based on her film. And with Imelda, she's a British character actress, and her film can be a little difficult, just like Secrets and Lies was, and maybe why Brenda Blethyn lost. So I think with Hilary, for as brutal as that film can be at times, it is more direct and American in its sensibility. And I think there was a respect for her that she went without makeup, besides the bloody makeup, obviously, but doing the de-glam sort of thing. Like, this is very much the era for that, where we had a lot of, beautiful actresses playing working class people and changing their faces and all this stuff. And so I think this just is very much in line with Charlize winning for Monster, Nicole winning for The Hours, even Halle Berry winning for Monsters Ball, that sort of thing. Like, it's so in a pattern that way.
Oh, well. I do think you mentioned Zellweger losing, but I do think it's important to mention that, or Winslet losing for Titanic, that in both of those cases they lost to films that were also Best Picture nominees.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were much more beloved than any of the contenders Swank was up against. And when Bening lost to Swank in Boys Don't Cry, I do think it was sort of one of those instances where there was such an overt transformation and such a narrative of this newcomer proving herself, and they had places elsewhere to honor the cast of American Beauty, as they did with Kevin Spacey, that I don't think any of those instances are equivalent to this year, where each of the other actresses were their film's sole acting nomination. None of the other films were Best Picture contenders, sadly. Even if Vera Drake got a director and writing nomination, and of course Eternal Sunshine won original screenplay. I do wonder if Swank would have won against competition that had either more narrative propulsiveness or more Academy-friendly movies. Like, I can't imagine if $1 Million Baby had come out in 2002. I'm not sure she wins, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what if? That is sort of the premise of this show and these discussions. But
yeah.
I can hide my disappointment with the final result. But oh well, that's life.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I think. I also think, maybe to your point, that like some of the other contenders came out so early in the season, and there was enough time for there to be backlash and a feeling of like, oh, this finally, it feels like we have this good alternative that we can sort of get behind. I know this is a strange comparison, but it sort of feels like how Coda won Best Picture, where it's just like a lot of the options that we were presented earlier as potential frontrunners are. I'm sorry, I should have. Trigger warning. But just like it felt like, oh, finally, okay, here we go. Even though that movie came out in August, it felt like people finally watched it in like February or something. And it was just like, okay, here we go. This is the one we can rally behind. Nice and easily digestible movie. Clear heroes and villains. Like, it's, that sort of thing. And sometimes that's what happens with the Academy, where, especially with Best Picture, I think like The Aviator had a not universally beloved reception. Sideways was like maybe considered too small. And then we finally have this great sort of like classic contender, very much in the mode of what the Academy likes. And it's like, okay, finally, here we go.
Yeah. And I mean, Eastwood had just had Mystic River the year before, so I think there was a groundswell of support for him.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. So I think we should get to some questions from Twitter. Lots of people had things to say about this race. Let's start with Fritz, who said Million Dollar Baby opened very late in the year and peaked at the exact right moment. Would Hilary also have won if the movie had come out a couple of months earlier?
Honestly, after our talk of the characters and all that may influence, I think so. I think she would have won even if the film came earlier. And if the film came earlier, I think she would have won NBR from Annette Bening, because NBR loves Eastwood so much.
That's true.
Because I'm thinking Bening is in the wife situation where people praise her performance, but the film is dismissed as not a good film, whatever. She's the only nomination, and her character is vaguely unlikable. Like she is literally described as a monster within the text of the film. Winslet is in a weird movie that I don't think the Academy was ready to fully embrace as they would do maybe now. And her character, again, we praise the fact that she's so prickly, that she flirts with unlikability so much, and that's a problem. And Vera Drake was obviously a very controversial issue, and I can see a more conservative leaning side of the Academy just revolting against that film and not voting just based on that. And the same thing for Catalina Sandino Moreno, who also had the issue of being a non-English speaking performance, which unfortunately is always at a disadvantage in these things. And both Staunton and Moreno were not so much Staunton, she was in a Best Picture winner before, but they were still not big names in a way that Swank was already an Oscar darling. In a way, she was already a winner. She was already a known property, a beloved one. So yeah. I think she would still won, to be perfectly honest.
I agree. I think it helps to be last just because of recency, but I don't think another contender would have emerged in that time. But Chauncey Tellez says, which Oscar would you rather Swank have? Definitely Boys Don't Cry for me.
Definitely Boys Don't Cry. There's no,
Yeah, not really a question. Both Miles McHale and Fritz kind of want to know why we think Hilary Swank essentially hasn't had the kind of career, and also Lila, same thing. Why did she not get more opportunities to be back at the Oscars in the following years? Is there a curse?
I think Swank is a limited actress in terms of at least what Hollywood thinks she can play.
Yeah, not given enough opportunities to go beyond a typecast, perhaps.
Yeah, and she had terrible luck in that the sort of more awardsy potential, the potential Oscar buzzy films she tried after this, like Amelia, just completely crashed and burned.
Just like Amelia.
We don't know what happened to her. It's a mystery.
Okay, fine. We don't know.
And I do think Swank has proven sometimes that she can be very ill cast. I'm thinking of The Affair of the Necklace, where she is really miscast.
Right. In
that, and that limits your opportunities when you have certain roles that you're good at, but that it's a limited register, and sometimes when that register isn't very common in Hollywood filmmaking, that can end up restricting what you can do. And then it's just a question of bad luck, like with Amelia, or maybe not knowing how to choose the best projects. Sadly, that's yeah. And maybe she's a cryptid. Maybe she likes to disappear after winning an Oscar. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know her life.
Yeah.
And maybe she just doesn't fit that traditional feminine ingenue type, like at that time especially. I feel like this is probably the first time since even like Louise Reiner where winning 2 Oscars sort of felt like, where do I go from here? In a way, like in terms of momentum, like something about it just set her up so much for like success at this relatively early age. And then now what? It sets it up for disappointment in a way. Existential Rock said, beloved character actress Margot Martindale has now supported 2 actresses to a win, but does not have her own nomination yet. I say we flip that around. Which current leading actress would you trust to support Margot Martindale to a Best Actress nomination?
I guess I would have to pick like a generous scene partner. So some actresses are out of the question. I'm not saying who.
Okay.
And also people that would make sense with Martindale. Maybe Jodie Foster or Susan Sarandon come to mind as potential
Yeah,
people. Like,
I thought of Jodie too. Yeah. Or Frances McDormand.
yeah, I don't know. I think if you put Frances McDormand in a film like with Martindale, well, maybe
Yeah.
Chastain.
I don't know.
Chastain seems always so
Yeah,
eager to support her co-stars, even
that's
in
true.
campaign beyond the films. I could see her sort of becoming in a season, sort of becoming Margot's main champion.
Yeah. Ben Roberts said Sandra Bullock was linked to Million Dollar Baby before Swank was cast. Do you think that version would have been as successful? If Bullock had won, would she still win for The Blind Side? Probably not. But I think if Sandra's in this role and she nails it like Hilary, I think she could definitely have a shot of winning. Yeah.
I think she wins. I think she's even.
Yeah.
She even has a stronger narrative than Swank, because
Probably.
she
Yeah.
would be just coming out of her early comedic successes. Action, comedy, actress, suddenly turns into deglams and turns into serious actress for Clint Eastwood. I think that would be even be a bigger story than what Swank accomplished. I think she would have won. I think she would have won even more easily than Swank did if she aced the part.
Yeah.
Which is still in for The Blind Side. I don't know. I don't want to think about it. The Blind Side made so much money that maybe. But I also think part of the Blind Side's narrative was, it was, Sandra Bullock showing she can do something else than what we're used to seeing her. So if she had done Million Dollar Baby before, there wouldn't be that sense of surprise and support.
True.
So maybe not. Maybe Streep would have won for Julie and Julia.
Right.
One can hope.
Interesting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about that film. I hate it so much. I'm sorry. Good luck with 2009.
John T said, given how both Bening and Winslet were bordering on due status, in Benning's case she had already nearly won on an overdue campaign in 99, why do you think Swank didn't struggle more with she already had an Oscar style complaints that have doomed other actresses' second Oscar bids? Good question. I think it was good timing, honestly. Like, the other contenders here weren't enough compelling to be winners. And it's an underdog story, and I think maybe it felt like she hadn't been like overexposed necessarily. Like, it was different enough from Boys Don't Cry to make it feel like a little bit of an evolution. I don't know. We already talked a lot about why we think it happened, but did you have anything else to add there?
No, I'll just reiterate. Bening was due, but she was in a film nobody cared about, and it's the wife. Sadly, it happened. I'm sorry. I think I'm bringing up trauma for you. I'm so sorry.
Every time you say it, it's a dagger in my heart.
Oh no! Which is interesting because Glenn Close should have won to me in '88 against someone who would win soon after.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to tell me twice.
The two-time winners keep robbing the overdue queens. Oh.
You're telling me. Yep. Okay. Fritz said, in 2002, I had told a friend I would bet $1 million that Hilary Swank will never be Oscar nominated again. Are there any other unexpected Oscar comebacks you would like to see? I mean, there's plenty for me.
Yeah,
but
there's so many. Part of my answer would be actresses who work in non-English cinema and also actresses of color have less opportunity.
Yeah.
So my immediate answer would be someone like Michelle Yeoh or Yoo Jung-yeon from Minari, or someone who has sort of been ostracized by industry, Monique, or Lupita Nyong'o, who should have been nominated for Us. So people like that. On the other hand, maybe I would say someone like Vanessa Redgrave or Tilda Swinton, who have really interesting careers, for whom the fact that they won an Oscar already seems like a miracle. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, wait, I have to say Lily Gladstone, because after last season, I want to see her there again.
Yeah, of course. I mean, those are so recent that I don't want to say like come back necessarily, because like they could still be in the height of their careers, Michelle and Lily and all those people. I'm gonna say like Halle Berry, like would just love to see her get the chance to be in a contender again. If I'm going like completely pie in the sky, like Shirley MacLaine, Sophia Loren, Cher, like, these people who haven't really even acted,
Oh,
or surely has, but
imagine Faye Dunaway in a
Faye Dunaway. Maybe that's the one.
in an awards race nowadays. Can you imagine
I
that promotional
need
circuit?
now that you've said it, I need this to happen again. Oh my god. Wow.
Poor Faye, full of so many little homosexuals around her for months. She'd go crazy.
So many salads would be thrown. I would also throw in like a Emma Thompson, because I'm sad that she hasn't been nominated since Sense and Sensibility. So I'd just like to see her again. Sean Kelly said, if you could take away one of Hilary's Oscars, which one, and who would you give it to? Well, I'm not going to say who I would give it to for this one, but this is the one that I would take away. I'll save who I would give it to until the end of this episode. Jeremy Kaplan said, Hilary Swank took 5 years to get a second Best Actress win. It's actually 6 years, but that's okay. Jodie Foster only took 3 years. Frances McDormand took 21. What other Best Actress from the 90s would you like to see win a second Best Actress Oscar now? So we would have Kathy Bates, Emma Thompson, Holly Hunter, I guess Jessica Lange, since she doesn't have a second Best Actress Oscar, Susan Sarandon, Helen Hunt, Gwyneth Paltrow. Which of those do you want to see win a second Best Actress Oscar?
I'm going to go very much against my spread the wealth philosophy and say Jessica Lange.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I want to see her being embraced by the movies again, and I'm very hopeful about Long Day's Journey into Night.
Me too. And that is a meaty role.
And she needs a Best Actress Oscar that she can be proud of. I'm sorry for the whatever person loves Blue Sky out there.
I agree. I mean, I would also just love to see Kathy Bates winning a second Best Actress Oscar. I would love to see what that would look like. Okay. Diego A. Cabrera said, how did Annette Bening win the Comedy Globe over Kate Winslet?
I think there was a lot of goodwill for her almost winning the Oscar in 1999. And for all that we thought of Winslet as an overdue actress during the 2008 season, I think she was still young enough, and at this point in her career that Bening seemed more overdue. I think it goes through that. And also it's a very showy performance. I think it's easier to recognize the merits in Annette's work than what Winslet is doing, and I think that plays a part in it too.
I agree. Yeah, and she was one of the early frontrunners to win the Oscar, and I think the Globes like to get on board with that sort of thing, and she is so active and funny in her film, so...
And she has that like amazing showcase at the end. It's like a 5-minute Oscar Globe. Yeah, and it's really... I tried to go to awards blogs, etc., and like on the Wayback Machine and read the materials from the 2004 season, and this is really interesting now, because nobody knew if Billy Our Baby would be ready. Nobody was thinking of Swank, and Annette Bening really. It seemed at some point that the race would be Annette Bening, sort of the overdue actress, versus Imelda Staunton, the critics' favorite. So I don't think Winslet was much of a factor in the end, even if she also add Finding Neverland to bolster her chances. Finding Neverland as Best Picture nominee.
Yeah. Jeremy Kaplan said, even though everyone was talking about the Bening versus Swank rematch at the time, do you think the flimsiness of being Julia doomed Benning's chances anyway? Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot. I think that's a big factor. I just don't think it captured people's attention as much as the others, and it felt like, Sunday matinee cinema, like Chocolat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting that when you think that Maria Full of Grace was supposed to be a TV movie, it was produced by HBO, but then it was given a theatrical release. If you look at them now, I think Being Julia seems very much more like a TV movie special than Maria Full of Grace ever does.
100%. Yeah. Oh, yes. Celluloid Siren said, is Catalina Sandino Moreno the most underrated nomination in this category of all time? Big claim there. I don't know about of all time, but maybe in like the 21st century, she's pretty underrated. Just feels like one that more people should see and talk about than there is now.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think people who see it tend to have favorable opinions of her. When I think of underrated, I may think of a performance that is maligned that I think actually deserves praise.
Yeah, that's true.
So I wouldn't, because that I think people at Maria Full of Grace sort of recognize the quality in her work, whereas something like Anne Margaret and Tommy is usually talked about as a disaster, but I think it's a piece of genius.
Sure.
And so I would say she's more underrated.
I love that answer. Christoph said, Catalina Sandino Moreno tied for the Best Actress award at the Berlin Film Festival with Charlize Theron for Monster. Does she get the nomination without the attention of winning the acting award at a major film festival as well? I mean, I think every bit of attention from critics helped to put her on the map,
I do,
obviously.
But I also think the Silver Bear doesn't really mean... It doesn't mean much now when European film festivals are becoming, against my wishes, much more tied to the Oscars. At that time, it meant even less. I think just the fact that it got great reviews out of Berlin, that made HBO release it theatrically was the thing. Even if she had lost the Silver Bear, I think she would still have had the same trajectory.
Amar said, what's your theory about how Catalina managed to get into SAG with such a subtle performance in a small movie, given the history of that organization, who always snub foreign language performances and prefer hammy overacting from big names?
And I was saying not to be mean to SAG.
Where is the line?
I think it is more of a case of the other possible contenders falling by the wayside.
Yeah.
Because who else would have... Because at a certain point, after $1 Million Baby came out, it seemed like the five solidified themselves. Who else would have been there? Sure, SAG... I can imagine SAG being prejudiced against a film like Maria Full of Grace, but even worse against something like Birth.
Right.
Or Kill Bill Volume 2, or... honestly, love songs for Bobby Long that nobody watched except the HFPA. By reading up, I was surprised to see Spanglish was so talked about as a potential Best Actress contender for Tia Leone, which should have been something.
Yeah. And I also think as a film and as a performance, it seems like the kind of thing like a Damien Bashir or A Better Life sort of thing,
comparison.
where like other actors see it and really champion it and it gains momentum. Like that could have been part of it.
Yeah, or Sarah Silverman's nomination.
Yeah.
Those little underseen films.
Joey Gentili said, Catalina was a woman robbed. Ever since this nomination, she has really struggled within the industry. Is this unfortunately another case of they just don't know what to do with her?
I think it's more of a consequence of the institutionalized racism in Hollywood, to be perfectly honest. Which can be read as they just don't know what to do with you, or maybe they just don't want to do anything with her.
Yeah, that's a very good distinction. She's had her moments, and she's on a show called From right now, which I've heard is good, but is not particularly well seen. She was in the Che movie. She was in Love in the Time of Cholera. She was in a Twilight movie. So she was in A Most Violent Year. She's had her moments, but
I think she should have been a supporting actress contender for Fast Food Nation. Just putting that out there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just extra difficult even for people like Penelope Cruz or Salma Hayek to get opportunities.
Like, I get that comment. I get that question, but also think about Hollywood in the years right after this nomination. What roles could she have played? What major roles?
Christoph said, Imelda Staunton was virtually unknown to mainstream audiences back in 2004. 3 years later, she played Dolores Umbridge. If she had been a well-known actress before breaking through with Vera Drake, would she have had a better shot at winning this?
I mean, yeah, I think unless your narrative is being a discovery, I think being better known is always helpful.
Yeah, definitely a better shot. I don't think it would have been quite enough, though, still, but yeah, would have made it closer, maybe. Glorfindel of Gondolin said Swank's performance was skillful and the narrative of awarding her another Oscar was really potent. I think the only person who stood a chance of defeating her was Staunton. Although her performance made an impact, was Staunton too much of a dark horse to win here? I mean, I think once the $1 Million Baby train got rolling, there was no stopping Hilary. I think Imelda is pretty, to me, undeniable. But I think it's just another one of those kinds of performances like Jenna Rollins in Women Under the Influence, or Brenda Blethyn, or Liv Ullmann with her, like Face to Face, where it's just like sometimes the level of vulnerability and emotion is just like too much for the full Academy membership.
I mean, I think we also must count the matter of the film's theme and reproductive rights.
Yeah.
That is so
true.
controversial now, and I would imagine it was also controversial in 2004. I think that would have put off a big part of the Academy. I would say $1 Million Baby is ideologically the most conservative of these 5 films, and it was sort of the champion out of them, so...
La Isla Bonita said, "This is the only nomination for Imelda Staunton, one of the greatest and most respected British actresses in history. Would you nominate her for any other role? And choose one Oscar-nominated role for Best Actress to replace with Imelda."
She's actually in my supporting actress ballot for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and I think she would have made a better nominee than some of the actual nominees for something even as small as Another Year. I think her 2 scene performance is amazing. Or even Pride in 2014. I wouldn't nominate her those times, but I do think she if she had been, she would have been deserving. What do I want to cast her in?
I'll just say for me, I don't know if I would have nominated her for anything else, but I mean, that would be incredible if she was nominated for Dolores Umbridge. That would be such a cool nomination. I've heard she's very good in Pride, which I haven't actually seen, though, so that's what makes it tough.
Okay, so I'm thinking of 3 roles that I might want.
Okay.
One of them is before Vera Drake,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been... I kind of wonder what her take on Queen Victoria for something like Mrs. Brown would have been.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Playing another queen, like Elizabeth.
And she sort of has a Queen Victoria type. She's so short.
She does have Queen Victoria vibes.
And the other 2 roles would be... I would really like to see her sort of play a theatrical grande dame, just in contrast to Vera Drake, and considering what I know she's capable of from seeing the tapings of Gypsy and Follies. So I'm thinking like The Last Station, the Alan Mirren role.
Mm.
I think it would have been interesting, and she sort of looks like the real life person. And the other one would have been Florence Foster Jenkins. I love that. Really curious what Imelda Staunton would have done with that role.
That would have been funny. I would like to have seen that version. I thought of some of those too, but one that also came to mind immediately was Philomena.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think would be quite devastating if she had taken on that role. I think that would be really good. Glorfindel of Gondolin said, "The Academy has a sustained history of nominating comedic performances in this category, and the early 2000s were no exception. Nearly every year a comedic performance was nominated, but they seldom win in the modern era. Was there ever a path for Winslet to win? I don't think so. If the film was more embraced, maybe. It does win original screenplay, obviously, which is great, but that was the only other nomination. And I think it's just not the kind of role that wins Oscars, especially at that time. Too sci-fi, too quirky.
I mean, you can sort of compare her to Diane Keaton in Annie Hall. But again, that is a film that is fully embraced in a way Eternal Sunshine wasn't necessarily. I guess, I don't know, trying to think as someone managing our campaign, maybe trying to make her, because there was some category confusion early on in the season, if she was going to be a lead or supporting for Finding Neverland, maybe try to campaign her very strongly as supporting for that film to try to have some of the body of work thing going in favor. And I do imagine that, like, if there were 10 Best Picture nominees at that time, I would imagine Eternal Sunshine would have been one of them because of that screenplay win. Yeah. And I think that might have helped. But without that, it's really difficult to see a path forward for her to win in 2004.
Because I also think Vera Drake would have been nominated too.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy Bayless said, if Eternal Sunshine is released now in a year of 10 Best Pictures, and when the Academy appreciates this type of film more, does it get more nominations, and therefore does Kate have more of a chance to win for this absolute classic? We basically just answered that. Yeah, I think, again, with like things like Everything Everywhere and Poor Things, even like The Shape of Water, I think maybe Eternal Sunshine was a little ahead of its time to be embraced by the Oscars.
I would imagine so. I can see it having so many more nominations nowadays. Again, thinking exactly of the Academy that embraced Poor Things or Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Existential Rock said, if someone else played Winslet's role, does she get nominated?
I mean,
Interesting.
It will depend question. On who it is.
I
if it is an actress like Winslet who was already flirting with Oscar and already had some nominations, I imagine so. They like to reward their favorites, and Winslet was certainly one of them. If it's some complete unknown, I don't think so.
Yeah. It's definitely not the kind of role that gets nominated no matter who plays it. Like, it's very specific.
Yeah, this is not a biopic.
Right. Yeah. But I think she is one of the most, for me, important factors for making it work, I think, is her performance.
I'm not even sure exactly if the film works without her.
Yeah, exactly. Greg Cramian said, if Kate got it this year, would she have even been nominated for The Reader? Well, I would say she wouldn't have even taken the role if she had already won an Oscar.
Yeah, that is sort of the domino effect.
I think so.
Because I do think a lot of the career decisions she took sort of were to guarantee that prestige. I actually, because I read some of these questions before, I wrote down a whole butterfly effect.
Oh, no.
What would have happened?
Well, that's what we got a question for with Chauncey Tellez, actually. Said, if Winslet wins here, what's the Oscar butterfly effect?
Okay,
so let's hear it.
Like, imagining she takes the same projects, which, as you said, I don't think would happen. But just to make matters simply, it's just the same filmography she has.
Yeah.
I don't think anything changes in 2006. She still gets nominated. That was another year where they kind of consolidated around a very strong 5 from the time the precursors started hitting. I don't think she wins for The Reader. I do think she's still Best Actress nominated, either for that or Revolutionary Road, but I don't think she wins. Indeed, I think Streep probably wins her 3rd Oscar for Doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And with Streep's Oscar for Doubt, I don't think she wins immediately for The Iron Lady, because she would be a 3-time Oscar winner by then. And I think in that case, Davis's narrative would have propelled her to a win for The Help. She was so close already.
Mm-hmm.
And with that Best Actress win, I don't think Davis is going supporting for Fences, because I think that was a very strategic play to guarantee a win.
Right.
But I think she's still nominated, and she because of Streep's Golden Globe speech, I feel Streep is still in. I think, unfortunately, Nega gets replaced by Davis, and I think Janelle Monáe gets nominated instead for Hidden Figures, and she had Moonlight, and we know now how much the Academy actually loved Moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle Williams probably wins for Manchester by the Sea. And I wonder if, without the overdue status and the Academy's apathy towards The Fabelmans, unfortunately, because I love that film, if Williams manages to get that nomination for The Fabelmans, and maybe we would see Deadweiler getting in, or Davis. I imagine probably more Deadweiler, because Davis was in an action film and Davis goes. So that's the domino effect, I imagine.
That's wild. I actually kind of would prefer that timeline. I'm just going to say it.
Yes, me too. I was looking at it and, this is so much better.
Like, that sounds nice. Yeah, I like that. I think something went off track here, and now we're in the darkest timeline.
Like, I don't like Streep and Doubt very much. I know a lot of other people love her, but still, this is a much nicer timeline. Look what you took away from us, Hilary Swank.
Yep. This is where it started. Hi Girls, Hi Louise said, has there ever been a Best Actress winning moment where all 4 losing actresses ever kept it more real than this year? Yeah, so for context, the Annette Bening, Catalina, Kate, Imelda were not particularly enthusiastic when Hilary won. I could say that. Polite applause.
I had never noticed that until I read this question on Twitter, and then I went to watch it.
Yeah.
And it is incredible how none of them even pretends to be enthusiastic about what just happened.
Yeah.
I have seen worse individual reaction. Like,
Yeah.
Worse is relative. I love when people actually show those sorts of reactions. Everybody should be Sally Kirkland.
Yeah.
But I would need to watch every acceptance speech to know that. But yeah, all the four of them being so apathetic is certainly unique when you look back at Oscar history.
Definitely. Yeah. One of my favorites is always 1973, which is Glenda Jackson's second win. Not everyone was there, but like Ellen Burstyn's reaction is like very animated. Joanne Woodward is confused as hell. It's very funny. Okay, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but if you've seen this question ahead of time, we can. Gordon said, recast these 5 roles with actresses who have never been Oscar nominated for acting.
Okay, I have to find it here on my notes on my 17 pages, but I did do this. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I would want a Colombian actress to play Maria.
Yeah.
And I don't think I know enough Colombian actresses to be able to say this.
Yeah, I just said an unknown for Maria Full of Grace.
Yeah. And I loved Patricia Ray so much in this film. I wonder what a young Patricia Ray could have done with this role. For $1 Million Baby, I thought of one of the people that was actually speculated for the role was Ashley Judd. She was one of the potential ones along with Sandra Bullock. I would have liked to see what her career could have become, even with Weinstein's blacklisting, if she had done $1 Million Baby. For Eternal Sunshine, I thought of Parker Posey.
I love that. Definitely.
I would have loved to see how prickly, even pricklier, she would have made Clementine. And I think she's an actress whose filmography would resonate with Clementine's speech about being perceived as a concept. Because I think that is a lot of Posey's 90s filmography. Sort of cast her in roles like that. It would have been an interesting reflection. For Vera Drake, I thought of Kathy Burke and Sophie Thompson.
Yeah. Good call.
Sophie Thompson was Emma Thompson's sister, and she does a lot of theater. And it would be interesting to see another actress that probably has received more acclaim on stage and on film, like Staunton, get that opportunity to shine. For being Julia, I was of two minds. One, do I want an American actress putting on an accent like Bening, or do I want to, like, if I went American, I'd probably go with Donna Murphy, because
I love that.
I think she'd be amazing as Julia.
Yeah,
and
that's so good.
For a British actress, I want Fiona Shaw, because I think she would have brought up very interesting things in that role.
Yeah. I went in a different direction with this because I decided to just do recasting with actresses if these films were made today. Just for fun, just as a fun exercise. Again, I would do an unknown for Maria Full of Grace. For $1 Million Baby, I really struggled, but I figured someone with like relatively young and who's maybe trying to prove themselves a little bit more with some of their choices would be like, as odd as this sounds, like a Lily James kind of thing would be interesting to see, like a total transformation. Eternal Sunshine, I thought it would be fun to have Iowa Debris.
Oh, that's such a cool choice.
Yeah. Yep. She has the quirks, but she also has dimension to her.
Oh,
I think that would be really cool.
I would love to see her play the meaner parts of Clementine. I don't think I've ever seen her.
Yeah.
In that register.
It would be really cool.
That's such a cool pick.
What's very funny about one of the ones you said is that, I mean, this would probably be at the time within contention, but like Vera Drake, I said Fiona Shaw. So, yeah, I think she could have done that pretty well. I forgot about the fact that these had to be not nominated for acting Oscars before for my other choice, because I just wanted to see this. I wanted to see Kate Winslet in being Julia. I just think that would be really funny.
It would be. It would be.
Yeah, just like nowadays, that would be so fun. So
She has never really done a grand dame like that.
yeah, so I would like to see it. Okay, Amar said, recast this lineup with the 2024 actress nominees. And also Cellulite Siren asked the same question, but they specified you can't cast Annette in Naiad. Yeah.
Okay. I have that.
So I don't know if this is like we're doing both in this case of like recasting these in 2004 or then 2004 to now.
I did both.
But I just did. Okay. I just did the one because I was tired. So I just did the ones from 2024 in 2004. So anyway.
Okay.
Or 2023 in 2004.
Okay, so for that one, again, it's difficult because of the ethnicity of the characters and the particularities of the role. But I do think Lily Gladstone would be an interesting choice for Maria Full of Grace if she was,
That's what I had. Yep.
The right pick for the part. It does seem like especially after Close of the Flower Moon, she's able to communicate so much with so little. And, in a hostile environment.
Right.
I would have loved to have seen a young Annette Bening in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Hell yeah. Yes.
I think she'd have been really, really fun because she can be a dream girl, like in Bugsy, but still complicated. Again, like in Bugsy, she's very prone to that. Emma Stone in $1 Million Baby. She's an actress with, I think, works. I admire her willingness to create roles through her physicality. Like in Poor Things. I wonder if she could nail something like $1 Million Baby. Not now, but I would imagine Carey Mulligan in the future in being Julia.
Yeah, I could see it.
And Sandra Uller in a German version of Vera Drake.
Sure, why not? Yeah, change some cultural references and yeah, you could do that. Well, what I went with this is, yes, Lily Gladstone in like a different kind of version of Maria Full of Grace, I guess. I said Carey Mulligan in $1 Million Baby because that would be a fascinating transformation because that, she's used to playing very like smaller, like petite kind of roles, and it would be fun to see her not typecast as that. This is so lazy, but I did do Emma Stone in Eternal Sunshine just because it feels like it's right there. I said that Annette Bening in Vera Drake.
Oh, I can't imagine that.
Yeah. And Sandra Hüller in being Julia.
Oh, Hüller would be amazing.
Yeah. I do like your version, though, of having Emma in $1 Million Baby. And who else? Younger Annette in Eternal Sunshine. That's really good. So what would you do in the inverse of that?
Okay. So Bening does Anatomy of the Fall.
Ooh, yes.
Because I think she would have... I think she would have had fun with that role. And she...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Catalina Sandino Moreno in Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, I think the tension both of these actresses can insinuate in very hostile environments without breaking is sort of like Lily Gladstone Moreno sort of make them ideal for these sorts of roles. I would love to see Hilary Swank in Naiad. Maybe not now, maybe in like 10 years more.
Makes sense.
I think she's usually very sympathetic, like with Maggie in $1 Million Baby. But there's that thing of working with your body, and I would like her to see her play a more difficult person to tolerate as Diana Nayad.
Yes, for sure.
This seems like the obvious choice, but Kate Winslet in Maestro.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Which leaves Imelda Staunton in Poor Things, which is a very interesting thought.
Yes.
Experiment.
Let's go.
But I was watching Poor Things. I thought I because I'm not that fond of Stone in Poor Things, even though I like the film, and I kept wondering watching that film what a theater trained actor maybe could have done with that role, especially because of what's the name of the actress? Oh no, the tragedy of Macbeth and Poor Things.
Catherine Hunter.
Catherine Hunter. Because of her presence there, it made me think of what an actress of the stage like Imelda Staunton. So I imagine like a 20-something Imelda Staunton, what could she have made with Poor Things? And maybe she'd have
Wow.
played her Scottish, as she is in the original text.
Wow. I love all those alternate scenarios. Okay, Chelsea said obligatory survivor questions. Who wins? Who dominates challenges? Who has the best social game, best strategy? Who would you want to be on your tribe or take on reward wins? Who goes on to appear on every other reality franchise? Okay, I will take the lead on this one. First of all, there's no way that Vera Drake succeeds in a game of lying, cheating, and stealing. That's just not happening.
Oh.
I think Julia is well liked, but maybe not a great challenge person, perhaps, compared to the others. Clementine, I could see fitting in very well. I would probably want to align with her, even though we would fight all the time. I think Maria is a classic under the radar stealth assassin. I think she could do very well. She knows how to adapt to any situation. So I think she would probably be the winner, Maria. The other one would be Maggie, who certainly a challenge threat. That's, definitely dominating challenges. I think she would run out of steam by the end, as she did here. So I think, Maria is the winner. And I think other reality franchises like The Traitors or, other like all-star type things, I could definitely see Clementine having the personality for that sort of thing compared to the other four.
I have never seen a single episode of Survivor.
That's okay. I've seen enough for the both of us.
I mostly experience it, again, through people I follow on social media loving that show.
You're welcome.
But from what little I've gleaned from it, and from maybe I shouldn't talk about podcast competition, but I do listen to Dead Meat. They do the horror Survivor, and I do watch that. It kind of, Maria sort of seems like the winner to me. Maybe Maggie would get the Sia prize money. She seems very likable.
Wow, you're so right about that. She would definitely sympathize with Maggie and be like, "Oh, you were cut short. Let me give you $50,000."
Maybe Vera would be a lovable goat to bring to the finale.
I think so too.
For Vera.
See, you know all the language of it. You know more than you let on.
You people invade my feed every time there is a season. Against my will.
You people. Yes.
I do think Clementine and Julia would probably become both of them reality show stars. Because of both of their personalities. Can you imagine
lots of memes.
Julia in Traitors?
Now that needs to happen. Yes. That was fun. Okay, well, we're running long, so I'm just going to combine all the other questions about snubs, including Uma Thurman for Kill Bill Volume 2, Julia Roberts for Closer, Emmy Rossum for Phantom of the Opera. Basically, a lot of the questions from people like Amar and of course, Nicole Kidman in Birth from Jimmy as well, Andrew Carden. They all kind of want to know why none of them got the traction to get in here.
None of their films were beloved enough. A lot of their characters were difficult to embrace, like Julia Roberts in Closer.
Yep.
And by the time these 5 sort of consolidated, there was basically nothing stopping them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But I would love to have seen Nicole in there. I would love to have seen Uma Thurman in there.
Yeah, me too.
What Juan Carlos Ojano said, who was in 6th place? And do you think she was realistically close to breaking into the lineup? Probably not. Like you said, the top 5 was pretty secure. Dare I say Uma Thurman was 6th?
I mean, probably. It's honestly 6th place. This series is very difficult to ascertain because it's just Ziggy's 5. I almost wonder if Scarlett Johansson got even a little bit close just because of Afterglow Love from 2003. But nobody watched her movies, so probably not. Yeah.
Probably not Téa Leoni for Spanglish. But
can you imagine her sex scene as an Oscar clip, though?
I am baffled by that performance. She was left to hang out to dry by James L. Brooks with that performance.
Criminal.
It is such an ugly characterization what they do to her there. But anyway.
She should have sued.
Yeah.
Imagine that character on Survivor, though.
That would be an immediate vote out for me. First boot.
Oh, no.
First boot. Or drag her to the end to get 0 votes. Last one from Joey Gentili. Recast these 2000s talents and Karen Black in these roles. Maggie Smith, Marcia Gay Harden, Marianne Cotillard, Salma Hayek, and Karen Black.
I always love the Karen Black.
Well, I guess I'll say Salma Hayek and Maria Full of Grace, even though that's uninspired, but I don't think anyone else here should be playing Maria.
I mean, unless you change the role, the story radically.
Right. Yeah.
Which is sort of the path I went by.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would have put Marion Cotillard in this role. Though, of course, it couldn't be the Colombian person. Maybe she's I don't know, an immigrant from France. I don't know, but it's
the Dardan's version of
Maria
Maria Full of Grace.
It's the kind of role I can see her exit. And I would put Hayek in $1 Million Baby.
That makes sense, too. Yeah, of the others.
Marcia Gay Harden I'd put in being Julia.
Me too. I think that would be fabulous. Yes.
She would bring the camp to that role.
She so would. Oh my god.
I would love
Maggie Smith and Vera Drake.
Yeah, Maggie Smith and Vera Drake, yeah. I would really like to see Maggie Smith working with Mike Lee or someone like that, because like she did some kitchen sink stuff at the beginning of her career on television, but she sort of abandoned it. I'd love to see her return to that mode one of these days. And that would leave Karen Black as Clementine for me.
Wow.
And
that's really fun.
I think she would have been amazing in it, to be honest. I love Karen Black. Not as much as Joey, but I do love Karen Black.
Of course. No one could. Yeah. My combination was Salma Hayek and Maria Full of Grace, which I prefer your version now. I said Marianne Cotillard in Eternal Sunshine, which would be fascinating to see. A younger Karen Black in $1 Million Baby.
I can see that.
Yeah, Marcia Gay Harden being Julia, and Maggie Smith and Vera Drake. All right, well, let's get to our final segment where we'll reveal who we think was the runner-up in this Best Actress race. Claudio, I'm very curious, who was the runner-up?
Okay, so I've been sort of going around 2 people.
Me too. I'm sure it's the same too.
I will just say Bening, because I think, again, sorry to be pouring a lemon on the wound. I think it's probably a similar scenario to Glenn Close in The Wife, where the film being so unloved sort of took away from her, but I still think she probably got a lot of votes. The other possibility would have been Staunton, the critic's darling.
Yeah, that's the ones that it was between for me as well, of course. I am actually going to go out on a limb and say the runner-up was Imelda Staunton, which I'm not super feeling confident about at the moment. But I do think the love for Vera Drake from the director's branch helps my position a little bit, in the sense that it feels like there was enough love for Vera Drake that she could have plausibly been getting votes. You know, I don't know if the passion was there for Annette Bening compared to what maybe the press was making it out to be, like Hilary Swank versus Annette Bening round 2. I think maybe Imelda had enough, especially British support, to help propel her to second place. But I am not fully confident in that. I would not be surprised if it was Annette Bening, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Imelda Staunton for now. So my other question for you is, who would you have voted for from this lineup?
Actually, me and a friend, last week, we were having a conversation that went very long about who we would have voted for if we were Oscar voters. And it usually differs from who we think was best.
Interesting.
Because there are so many factors going on. And if I voted on quality, my favorite performance of the bunch, I would go with Kate Winslet. But I can see myself thinking, she'll be back. Many times. So I would probably vote for Staunton. with sort of I would rank second to Winslet in sort of quality, but I would imagine, and so far I've been proven right, that she would never get this opportunity again.
Yeah, it's between those two for me as well. So we're very much in line with this race apparently this year. But even though I'm looking at the projections and I don't know if I would reward Kate Winslet for any Oscar at this point looking forward, which sucks because I love her so much. But I think just looking at these performances, it's Imelda Staunton for me that towers above this lineup and is just a shattering performance that I will never forget. So it's got to be Imelda for me. On that note, Claudio, this was a lot of fun doing this deep dive into 2004. I always love talking actresses with you, so thank you so much.
Oh, the feeling is completely mutual.
Yeah. Well, tell people where they could find more of you on the internet.
So most of my social media handles are Cláudio Alves DC. I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, everywhere. You can find my writing in English at The Film Experience, some long-form essays at Photogenie, and recently I've started writing for the International Cinephile Society as well. If you can read in Portuguese, I regularly write for the Portuguese website Magazine HD. And that's mostly it.
And thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on all platforms at Kevin_Jacobson. The show's at Oscar Runner Up on Twitter, Instagram at And The Runner Up Is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you liked what you heard, go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is, where you can hear a whole bunch of bonus episodes. Next week, we'll be breaking down the Best Actress lineup of 2005, where the nominees were Judi Dench in Mrs. Henderson Presents, Felicity Huffman in Transamerica, Keira Knightley in Pride and Prejudice, Charlize Theron in North Country, and Reese Witherspoon in Walk the Line, with the winner being Reese Witherspoon. So with that, thanks again, Claudio, and I will bid you all adieu.